DJ Swift on the truth.
I turned the preacher daughter bad, I think I'm a devil. These niggas know what up, you know I'm bold up. I'm in the streets, I keep that heat, you know that I be stepping. I miss the north just like my granny, my heart in them trenches. Yo, girl gon' cheat on you for nothing, so I'm done with these bitches. I think about it every minute, ain't stopping my mission. On my payroll, I got hitters, I pay them commission. Interrogated by detectives, won't tell them I did it. I told Montana that I love him, on Dave, I meant it. Put 20,000 on his head, they catching my senate. Get on my knees on side the bed like Father forgive me. Was selling weed, fucked up my profit, I ain't make $1. The fame getting to my niggas, I cut off my partners. Before I call on you, I put my trust up in his chopper. Moving like he can't get touched real quick, I bet I stop him. Nigga ain't give me shit, but hand out like I owe him some. I don't give a fuck, oh, if we step together, I'll show you something. Bitches think they slick, they all deceived, so I never love them. Bree was my first love, but she changed, so I never trust them. This the files of a nigga who ain't never bleed. This the story of a child who was in them streets. Why the fuck I'm taking care of them, they ain't do shit for me. Why the fuck I'm showing you so much love and bitch you leaving me. Keandre dead, the only thing I think about is Tyler. I'm full of pain, but wake up every morning and I'm smiling. They think I'm dumb, you got me fucked up, I got plenty knowledge. They don't give a fuck about how I feel, they don't know my problem. Just cause you around me, I ain't forget about everything you said. I let some shots off in the air for all my niggas dead. Do anything in the world for you, I'm living red. Showing love to them niggas, they might bust my head. Mad about a gun before effect, bitch, I won't do you nothing. Mad that I'm up, but you remember, you ain't give me nothing. I ain't give up on my mission, fuck you mean, bitch, I was steady hustling. Handing all you niggas money, bitch, and I was steady struggling. Montana know about my pain and everything I told him. I told him watch what he was saying, but shit, I had to fold him. Up in that cell, bitch, I was crying with no one to hold me. Young boy soldier, I remember what my grandpa told me. Batty boy, if you cross, I'ma take your life. I'm full of drugs, so I'ma die if I get caught tonight. Tell my little brother and my sons it's gonna be alright. NBA into the end, it's a way of life. Young nigga filling up his arm with some hair on. He was a bandit as a child, screaming red rum. You spell it backwards, what that mean, nigga? Murder. Living wrong and right, trusting nobody till his time come. Your ex exposed you, now you mad like I was never here. Where I come from, I gotta keep this bitch up on my hip. Mama forgive me for all them times I used to trip. Know it's a purpose in this world why I need to live. It ain't too long, you don't give a fuck about me, bitch. I did something for all y'all, y'all got me fucked up. Off the flap, I ain't got a smile in nobody's face. Y'all tell me about all y'all problems, I don't ask how I'm feeling, huh? Bitch, I been feeling like I'm finna die. Bitch, I cry alone. This for all them young niggas who gone and all them people who miss their babies. You hear me? Fuck everybody who in mine. Y'all ain't making my life no better. Gang. Young nigga filling up his arm with some hair on. He was a bandit as a child, screaming red rum. You spell it backwards, what that mean, nigga? Murder. Living wrong and right, trusting nobody till his time come. Batty boy, if you cross, I'ma take your life. I'm full of drugs, so I'ma die if I get caught tonight. Tell my little brother and my sons it's gonna be alright. NBA into the end, it's a way of life. Batty boy, Slap.
We Japanese still. You can cook in front of your family like a Japanese meal. It's Yashup the Hibachi, and none of you niggas can stop me. Can't help but watch me. So look, bro. Man, we were just discussing, chopping it up with the fam, and they want us to go at this brother, man. This dude named Without History on YouTube. You know, we came to the conclusion that we need to address some more of his content because just like Ben Anaya, these guys are charlatans and they selling you guys this misinformation packaged with lies. And there's a lot to be addressed, bro. It's a lot that needs to be addressed here. We really want you guys to understand the information. There's too many cults out there. There's too many mistruths, too much misinformation, too much deceit. out there. So we're trying to provide a clean glass of water and perspective. Today's video that we're going to deal with from the channel known as Without History, and I think it's very apropos that his channel is named Without History, because his channel is very ahistorical, and without history, you would not be able to challenge anything he says, because most of what he says is just a bunch of Afrocentric mumbo jumbo, basically trying to Africanize all of world history to try to say that, hey, everybody and everything that's important in history is actually some way a Black African. It's just a very weird approach. And again, it's Uno reversing the Eurocentric or racist view that everything's white. So they just say, okay, let's just reverse that and say everything's Black. First of all, skin color does not denote ancestry. I don't know how many times I have to say that on this channel. Skin color does not denote ancestry whatsoever. Someone can be dark skinned, someone can have kinky hair, someone can have prognathicism, they can have a wide nose, big lips, whatever. Does not mean anything as far as deep ancestry and who you share ancestry with. Case in point, African Americans, 30 to 40% of the African American male population share common ancestry with the white American male population. So you can look completely different than your cousins, than your relatives, than your ancestors. And that's what's so hard for you guys to get. And it seems every year and at every video, we have to drive that point home, because there's always some charlatan on the net that is trying to sell you guys skin color instead of teaching you guys ancestry. Two different things. So with no further ado, let me introduce my brother, the savant from the Levant. How you feeling, brother?
Hey, what's up? What's up? Can't wait to get into this video. And as a matter of fact, what's kind of interesting about this video is that this particular person kind of used, I can't even say kind of, but he got screenshots of different images and slides that I've made in my own videos. And obviously, unfortunately, he kind of twists some of the information concerning certain human populations that I've covered on my own channel. And this is also why I want to really clear up the misconceptions that this particular person, says, because yeah, I don't like that he ended up using some of my stuff, like actual slides. But so yeah, I can't wait to get into this video and kind of clean this mess.
It's a mess indeed. It's a very much so a mess. And he's preying on people's ignorance, like most of these groups do. Benaniah, however you say his name. They do the same thing. They prey on your ignorance. They give you a well-produced video, wow you with the aesthetics, and draw you in that way. Because the video looks nice does not mean the information that goes along with it is, necessarily the correct information. What this guy does is he will take some truth and then, sprinkle some truth over just farces. Like most of the stuff he's saying is farces, and it's stuff that comes from the older generation of the community, right? Like your Sheikh Diops, your Ivan Sertimas, your Dr. Beans. Most of these people are like seen as pillars to Afrocentric groups. And the issue with that is, like, you guys treat it as a cult, and you treat him as like some kind of messiah figure instead of, no, he's a human. Like, humans can make mistakes. There should be checks and balances. His work still needs to be reviewed, and it has been reviewed and discarded. A lot of the stuff they said, like Africans somehow spearheading Greeks, and how Mycenaeans being Africans, and the Pelagians also being Africans, and the Etruscans, so on and so forth. We still see these same myths and mythos being retold today in the YouTube era and social media era. We still see it. And it should die with the information. And the information, you understand, the information is showing you that these people are not who you guys say they are. With that being said, Avery, let's go straight to the video. Bring it to the beginning. Also, fair use. We are well covered under Copyright 107, the Fair Use Act. During the video, you will see this banner under the screen. So we are protected because we are giving our commentary and our critique of the video. With that being said, let's get right into it. As you guys can see, here's the video. Episode 10, historians are baffled by Africans' achievements in prehistory. The channel owner is without history, or the channel name, rather, is without history. And they have this banner here saying they lied for 12,000 years. And this is usually a common theme for Afrocentrics, Black Hebrew Israelites, is claiming they lied. Everybody's lying except them, you know. Anyway, let's get to it.
The Egyptians were the teachers of the Greeks, and no one really considered the Greeks serious as philosophers, for instance. And Socrates and Plato and these people had transmitted elements of their philosophy.
There is often a great debate about the true originators of the classical civilizations in history. In truth, it is not a mystery that Africans were the originators of civilization. Archaeologists have known this for centuries, but somehow it hasn't made it to our history books. Once you realize how widespread and influential the Africans were to the classical civilizations, you will understand that it is the puzzle piece that ties all ancient civilizations together. From the Natufians, who invented agriculture, to the Sumerians, the writers of the Epic of Gilgamesh, to the Phoenicians, the great seafarers who invented our modern writing system, to the Carthaginians who almost wiped out the Romans, the Garamantes, to the Etruscans who invented everything that the Romans inherited, to the ancient Egyptians, to the Pelasgians, the early Greeks, to the ancient Chinese and the Mesoamerican, and more.
Wait,
As
pause.
we do this study, please keep this in mind.
Is he saying that all those populations he just named, Native Americans, Sumerians, Etruscans,
Chinese,
Chinese, what else? You know,
Phoenician.
all the groups he named. Is he saying that they're all black? Like,
yes.
Wow.
Yeah, emphatically. That's what he's dropping the skill bomb, man.
So if that's the case, I'm kind of wondering where does he think Middle Easterners and white people and Native Americans and these groups come from? Like what? Like where did they? I'm trying to think of like what part of the world are they coming from? Most of the world was populated by black people. Like trying to understand.
Yeah, this is racial purist ideology where you try to paint human history with one racial element, and that's it. One racial element. You want to say early Chinese are these Africans, or you know, and he knows he's trying to compare it to haplogroup E, right? And he's trying to claim that every society and civilization, even the Mesoamerican ones, even the Chinese ones, are all spearheaded by these ancient African people.
Okay.
It's a neo-Nazi way of looking at world history.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you can go back there. You can go.
Showing that Africans ignited the spark of civilization after the great reboot of the Younger Dryas 12,000 years ago does not mean that other peoples were not capable of civilization building. Far from that. If anything, it fills in the historical and logical gap that our current narrative of history has imposed onto us. There is so much evidence of Africans birthing great civilizations and spreading that I will leave a ton of sources for those who want to explore more. Towards the end of the video, we will also address the burning question that so many have asked. The question that explains it all and ties everything together. that same question that we see posted everywhere online. If Africans were at the seat of civilization and dominated so much in antiquity, how come a lot of the Africans today are at the bottom of the economic ladder? But for now, let us go back, all the way to the beginning, the place where it all started, with the one invention that changed the course of human history for good. And we will see how, since that invention, we have had an unbroken line of civilization evolution. It was agriculture that really kick-started it all. It took us out of the hunter-gatherer mode to an agrarian society with job specialization. Life for humans at the end of the last ice age, before the Younger Dryas event, was marked by significant changes and challenges. The last ice age, also known as the Pleistocene epoch, lasted from about 2.6 million years ago to around 11,700 years ago, ending with the onset of the Holocene epoch. The period just before the Younger Dryas, which occurred between 19,000 and 11,000 years ago, saw the retreat of massive ice sheets, leading to a warmer and more stable climate. The climate was gradually warming, leading to the melting of large ice sheets that had covered much of North America, Europe, and Asia. As the ice melted, sea levels rose, flooding coastal areas and creating new shorelines. The retreating ice transformed landscapes, creating new habitats for plants and animals. Forests began to spread, and grasslands developed in some regions. One of the areas that benefited the most from this changing climate was the Fertile Crescent. The last ice age had a remarkable impact on the soil fertility of the Fertile Crescent, which is a region in the Middle East that borders the eastern flank of the Mediterranean Sea, covering parts of modern-day Egypt, Iraq, Palestine, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan. Take note of this, as it will become important when we trace back civilizations. This combination of fertile soil and the availability of water from the Nile, the Tigris, Euphrates, and the ancient Sahara River networks created ideal conditions for agriculture, supporting the growth of early civilizations in the Fertile Crescent and North Africa. So, in 12,000 BC...
Let me pause it here. I just want to give some, background information on this. So he's absolutely correct about the Younger Dryas event, glacial sheet retraction, and weather starting to change across the globe due to that. And a lot of places like the Sahara, like the Fertile Crescent in the Middle East, are now opening up and having warmer climates, and starting to be more of a grassland and suitable for agriculture. So he's correct about that, and that's what I'm gonna tell you. It's a repeated theme in his videos. Is he's going to give you some correct information, and then he's going to explode the entire video with a bunch of pseudo nonsensical arguments. And you're about to get ready to hear that. So basically, he's building this up to say these people in the regions of Syria, these people that are along the Fertile Crescent and Iraq and the Sumerians, he's getting ready to make this claim that they are somehow all Africoid, all Negroid, all, of the same common ancestral descent, and then spearheaded by these people and brought forth civilization to these lands. He does not allow diversity, which we see in human history. Throughout human history, diversity. We see different people contributing to different places across the globe, whether it be in Africa, Middle East, Asia, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But he's going to paint this racial purist argument and narrative to, entrap his audience to believe that, hey, this is how it went. It's just this one singular line that dealt with this and, spearheading all these things, which is not true. And this is why you get all of these people into the Afrocentric cults, into Egypt, Black Hebrew Israelite, Kemet, all that nonsense, because the core argument is racial. The core argument is racial in all of them. All groups do it. It's just, make one race the dominant factor in everything in history. And first of all, race is fictitious. These people that you coagulate together and make as race are different ancestries put together. As the African American is the greatest example. Some of us are European descent, some of us Native American descent, some of us are Western Central African descent, North African descent. So the idea of race itself is flawed, and then you try to use that to buttress your claim, just ruins everything. Oh, I see dark-skinned people here. I see dark-skinned people in Syria. I see dark-skinned people in Akkad. They must all be the same. That's not how it works. And now we have over 20 to 30 years of genetic studies, finding skeletal remains and exhuming their bodies. Now we're seeing that, hey, human history is more diverse than people like the proto-Nazis and racist Nazis would like you to believe. And all you're seeing with these Afrocentrics is they're reversing what the Nazis and rednecks of the past believed in. They're saying the same thing and just replacing the word with white or Aryan with African or, Negroid. That's all they're doing. And that's how he opens this video. Shalom to my sister Shari. I see you in the building.
Shalom, shalom, y'all.
Hey, shalom.
So y'all get into the good stuff, huh?
We get into the pseudo stuff.
Just the soup without the meat in it.
Yeah.
In modern-day Syria, the first true civilization appeared. Thanks to the discovery of agriculture, humans, and now able to undertake projects which would have previously been impossible in a hunter-gatherer society. These early agriculturalists were called the Natufians. The Natufians played a crucial role in the transition from hunter-gatherer societies to agricultural communities. Living in the Levant region of the Middle East around 12,000 to 9,500 BCE, the Natufians are considered one of the first groups to practice early forms of agriculture. The Natufians settled in permanent or semi-permanent villages, a major shift from the nomadic lifestyle of earlier hunter-gatherer groups. This was possible due to the abundance of wild cereals and other resources in the region. They began cultivating and harvesting wild varieties of wheat and barley, and they also stored these grains, demonstrating an early form of agricultural practice. They engaged in the systematic collection of wild cereals, which is considered a precursor to full-scale agriculture, and they invented a number of tools to assist them. This included sickles with flint blades for harvesting cereals and stone mortars and pestles for grinding grains. So, what does the research say about the Natufians and their genetic makeup? In 2009, researchers from the Department of Anthropology of the University of Florida made a startling discovery. The paper attests that the Semitic language, in fact, has its roots in all the African languages. And I quote, "These results indicate that the ancestor of all Semitic languages in our dataset was being spoken in the Near East no earlier than approximately 7400 YBP, after having diverged from Afro-Asiatic in Africa." End quote. Here is a chart that depicts the evolution of Semitic languages, and notice their origin. So in short, well into the Stone Age, Afro-Asiatic originated in Africa and fanned out towards the Levant, before further branching out into the various Semitic languages that we know.
Can you pause real quick?
Interestingly enough.
So this part right here, I would say, just like what Jashoub said when it came to the younger Dryas, he was right about that. This particular section right here, he's also correct on Afro-Asiatic. There's a couple of different theories for where Proto-Afro-Asiatic may have originated. I don't think there's like a set definitive answer, but basically Proto-Afro-Asiatic would have either originated in Africa or the Near East, and he said the African origin. That is true. It could have originated in like the Horn of Africa or the Green Sahara or the or somewhere near the Red Sea region. And then, Proto-Semites, the ancestors of Proto-Semitic populations, would have migrated from Africa into the Levant and then from there they would disperse to other parts of the Near East. I've covered this in videos in the past. I've covered on Genesis 49ers. I believe Jashub's covered it as well. So this right here, he's right on. But he's going to say some other stuff here in a minute because he's talking about the Natufian genetic breakdown. And it's the part with the Natufians. He's going to kind of get a few things mixed up here. But so far, in terms of like the language and stuff, this is basic information anybody can read on. He's right about it.
The evolution of these languages matches exactly the evolution and root of haplogroup E. And this is what researchers from the University of Michigan confirmed in the 2005 paper, where they showed that Natufians had clear sub-Saharan African linkage. And I quote, "It is a further surprise that the Epipaleolithic Natufian of Israel, from whom the Neolithic realm was assumed to arise, has a clear link to sub-Saharan Africa." End quote. They also go on to add that the small Natufian sample falls between the Niger.
So this paper right here is dealing with morphology, basically the phenotype, the facial makeup of the Natufians. And so basically, and you know, biologists have been saying this, you know, for years, that it seems like the Natufians, phenotypically, they kind of fall in between like a Negroid and a typical Mediterranean phenotype. And don't get this twisted with genetics. It's not saying that the Natufians are Niger Congo people, or that the Natufians are sub-Saharan Africans. It's saying that their morphology, their faces, are basically robust, and they have a phenotype that's basically similar to like a Negroid / Mediterranean phenotype. But this isn't particularly strange because the Natufians are a Neolithic human population. All Neolithic humans are, for one, pretty much dark-skinned. Like the light-skinned allele doesn't exist yet. So by default, they're going to be dark-skinned. By default, Neolithic humans, Mesolithic humans, they seem to have been a bit robust in terms of their morphology, a bit big. But I just want y'all to keep that in mind. But when it comes to the autosomal makeup of the Natufians, they don't have West Central African DNA that we've seen so far. And I actually have a paper that brings up the breakdown of the Natufian genome and what populations Natufians are closest to. But yeah, you can go ahead and play it. I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, I got a lot to say about this part and what he's about. The next claim he's going to make, just like you said, this is the sleight of hand. He gave you a paper, and he's claiming that he's going to give you the genetic makeup of the Natufians, and this paper is not talking about that. Just as you stated, the paper says it itself that it's the craniofacial morphology, the shape of their face is what they're dealing with here, and they're saying that they will be clearly linked to how Niger Congo people's facial craniofacial dimensions are right here. So it's talking about human craniofacial dimensions, but he's trying to make it seem like this is talking about genetic relateness, and it's not. This is why it's very important to read these papers, because if you don't and you allow these charlatans on the internet to trip you up, that's what's going to happen. And here's the thing: that robustness and that look was not foreign to the ancient world, just like Avery just hinted to. The paper tells you. What did Avery tell you about the robustness? So let me just go real quick to it. ROBS, there it is. Look, it says in denograms such as figure 1, which he's going to show the denogram in figure 3. It says the little Natufian samples cluster with the Mesolithic of France, the North African Epipaleolithic. So these are old peoples living in Europe, living in North Africa, and also in the European Upper Paleolithic. But the lengths of each of these twigs show that the relationships are comparatively remote. These are all late Pleistocene or very early post-Pleistocene groups, and they are also noticeably more robust than more recent human groups. So this is not, foreign to the ancient world. The same thing can be said about these other groups, the early Paleolithic Europeans, the early North Africans. The same exact thing. They would look like the brother said, more dark skin. The further we go back in time, more dark skin, and their phenotypical morphology of their faces will be more robust than they are today. That's all it's saying. And this is not talking about genetic relatedness. Does this mean that everybody that's dark skinned today are more robust today are related to Mesolithic people in France? No, it doesn't. Does it mean the same thing for Upper European Paleolithic? No, it doesn't. It just means they share similar forms in face and morphology. That's it. That's all this paper is saying. But he tries to do the sleight of hand and tell you, no, this is about genetic relatedness, and it's not. It's not. This is why you got to read a book. You just got to read. You got to read. I know you guys get tricked and beguiled by the production and the sound quality of the video draws you in, but just do a little bit of research. You don't have to do much. A little bit of reading, and you can destroy that. You just debunk and refute everything this guy's saying. So let's get back to the video.
Congo group and the other samples used. In fact, proximity similarity analysis shows that Niger-Congo languages are the most closely related languages to Natufian.
Oh, okay, so
you already know I had that one queued up for the pause, bro.
Yeah. This is not talking about language. This is talking about human populations. It even has like late prehistoric Eurasia. Like, what language is late prehistoric Eurasia? Like, no, this is not talking about languages. It's talking about morphology. I think it even says it down there, but I can't quite see it. But it's talking about human populations in terms of their facial structure. So Natufians have a facial structure very akin to Niger-Congo people. That's all it's saying. We don't.
And just as I said, yeah, it doesn't say anything about languages. Nowhere in this paper does it talk about languages. This is craniofacial morphology that we're talking about, the shape and form of people's faces. That's what we're dealing with here. And he just inserted the word language. This is charlatan behavior. And again, just as we just said and read in the paper, look at those other groups: prehistoric and recent Northeast Africans, Algerian Neolithic, that's the Stone Age, the New Stone, prehistoric Mediterranean, late prehistoric Eurasia, what we're talking about, Upper Paleolithic Europeans. They were all clustered in this group.
He thinking those are all languages.
Yeah, they're all languages. No, this is not languages. This is craniofacial metrics. That's all we dealing with here. It's the sleight of hand.
I wonder if he. All right, so I kind of wonder, did he accidentally make that assumption, or did he just read it and then lied altogether on what this is? Because it's either he lied or he didn't read it at all and doesn't know. Either way, it's bad. But
well, on the last video, he used ChatGPT to kind of summarize the papers that he was quote unquote reading, but ChatGPT can't read and understand diagrams and charts and stuff like that when it comes to these papers. So it's highly likely he did the same thing for this one. He used ChatGPT to give him some summaries, and because he can't understand, this is me assuming, because he can't understand the figures and charts and all that stuff, he's just winging it.
Wow.
He winging it. He winging it. All right. He going far away, far and beyond the purpose of this paper, man.
For real.
Oh my God.
In a land far, far away where science does not science.
He coloring outside the lines right now. He coloring outside the line.
Homeboy said, "What lines?"
Also, to make this a little bit clear for the people, Natufians do not speak the Niger-Congo language. As a matter of fact, the Niger-Congo language is typically dated to be at least 10,000 years old, forming possibly either in the Green Sahara, Eastern Africa, or West Africa. The Niger-Congo language, Proto-Niger-Congo, did not form in the Levant where the Natufians lived, and the Natufians are typically dated to about 15,000 to 11,000 years old. So the Natufians predate the Niger-Congo language, although I know some people might say, well, when it comes to Proto-Niger-Congos, there's different dates as to when it formed. Yes, there are different time periods, but still, Proto-Niger-Congo, no one says that it formed in the Levant, nor that the Natufians spoke a Proto-Niger-Congo language. I don't think you'll never find any peer-reviewed paper that would say that. So yeah, hopefully that was clear.
Let me repeat that. Niger-Congo languages are the most closely related languages to Natufian. As you can also see, canonical variate analysis shows that Natufian sits between Niger-Congo and prehistoric North Africa. So it would have sounded like a merging of both these languages. We will see later on who
No.
No, not what the paper says.
Yeah, I don't think he read this paper, but no, the facial wise, you know, the morphology, the Niger-Congo people, or should I say the Natufians, fall somewhere in between a Niger-Congo morphology and a prehistoric / recent Northeast African morphology. As a matter of fact, if you look at a lot of Natufian reconstructions, they kind of do look like basically a mixed person. Like they phenotypically have a little bit of a West African phenotype and a Near Eastern phenotype. So yeah, this has nothing to do with language. What would prehistoric and recent Northeast African language even be? That doesn't even make sense. Like it would name a language family if it's talking about a language family. It even has Cro-Magnon right there with the X. What's the Cro-Magnon language? You see Cro-Magnon right there? Just shoot at the bottom.
Yeah.
Cro-Magnon 1. Like, what language is that? Like, if this is supposed to be a language chart.
Yeah, this dude is ridiculous. This is just talking about ancient and modern groups. That's
He
it.
probably just gonna make one up for us.
He's gonna make one up. This is almost as bad when Benaiah said that that the Yemniah actually called themselves Yemniah. You remember that?
Oh yeah, I remember.
That's the name they used to go by back in the day. Like, oh, bro. That's the name that modern people today gave them. We don't know what they called themselves. You know,
it's like somebody saying the Neanderthals called themselves, well, Neanderthals called themselves Neanderthal.
You know, like, Pacrocino said, "Oh, show me the son Neanderthal in the Bible. If Neanderthals are real, shouldn't he come from the son Neanderthal?" Like, oh my God, that's
bro. I think it was either G-Con or maybe Pacro or somebody, but they said, "Show me in the Bible where a person named Natufian," and I was like, "What?"
Yeah, that's what it was. Natufian, not Neanderthal, Natufian. Show me in the Bible the son of Natuf. I'm like, yo, do you guys just shut your brain off completely before you have these conversations? Like, come on, man, think, use your noggin.
And to make this a bit clear, the reason why some of these names are given is typically because of a location. Natufians are called Natufians because of the Natuf caves that the bodies were found in. Neanderthals are called Neanderthals because of I think it was the Neanderthal Valley or the Neanderthal Cave that it was found in. So that's why some of these names are given to old populations, like where they're found. It's not what they called themselves. It's location.
Yeah, that just goes to this paper real quick. Just clear this up. Just real quick, man, because it's just silly. So again, the same paper, and this is the image he showed, right? Let's read above it for a minute. It says, there are some generalizations that are apparent from the picture presented in both the greater individual numbers of twigs shown in figure 1 and the combined pattern shown in figure 3. When the maximum number of twigs is plotted, despite the very small numbers involved, the late Pleistocene samples from Israel, Europe, and North Africa tend to link to each other before they tie to the modern representatives of each of the areas in questions. Again, because the ancient peoples do not look like the modern peoples. That's all it's saying. It's not saying they're not related to each other genetically, meaning they don't have a lineal descent and they don't come from a product of sex from these people. It's just saying from a morphological standpoint, they look different. And Avery, you showed early Upper Paleolithic Europeans. They're dark skinned, they have straight long hair, they're dark skinned, brown eyed. Today, that's not the typical look of a European. This is basically what that's saying in a nutshell, right?
Yeah.
It says here, as shown in Figure 1, in that run, the Natufian of Israel ties to the French Mesolithic and then to the Tafelrod sample from North Africa. So again, saying the same thing, that the Natufians in Israel would look like ancient Frenchmen, an ancient person living in the land that we know as French. That's all it's saying. And also look similar to a North African. That's why when you looked at it, all these groups were clustered together. It says this. These then link with European Upper Paleolithic sample, and somewhat surprisingly, with the Chan Man, the Mongolian Bronze Age sample, and finally, at the next step, with the Danish Neolithic. See, he just left all this out because he got happy. His drawers got wet when he saw Niger Congo next to Natufian, and he tried to use that as a parameter to say this is talking about language. This is not talking about language. This is talking about the physical shape of their faces. It says here, one of the things that these geographically diverse groups clearly have in common is a degree of robustness that sets them apart from the recent inhabitants of the areas in which they are found. Again, this is talking about facial shapes, craniofacial shapes. That's it. Apart from the quantitative relationships shown in figures, what are you saying, bro?
No, go ahead, and then I'll ask you this question, but go ahead.
All right. Apart from the quantitative relationships shown in figures 1, 2, 3, and 4, most of the Neolithic samples in Europe share non-metric features of the lateral edge of the orbit. What is the orbit? This is clearly talking about your skull. The shape of the gonial angle of the mandible. Where's your mandible at? Come on now. And the configuration of mention that are present even when degrees of size and robustness vary between the regions represented. This is just talking about how their faces look, man, and the shapes of their faces. It's clear if you read the paper. These non-metric attributes all support the view that most of Neolithic inhabitants of Europe tie more closely together with each other than with living representatives of the areas in question. Again, saying the ancient inhabitants of Europe look different than modern Europeans. That's all it's saying. It says the principal exception to this generalization is one of the two small samples of the German Neolithic, the Mossberg sample, which ties closer metrically to the living inhabitants of the Middle East and North Africa. Metrically, the other German Neolithic sample, Taber-Biskopf-Scheme, links with the living Central European samples. Non-metrically, those two small German Neolithic samples also appear strikingly different from each other. Then you get the chart from Figure 4, explaining what we just read. You see the prehistoric Mediterranean, modern Mediterranean, Algerian Neolithic, late prehistoric Eurasia, modern European, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, Cro-Magnon all the way down here. And then you see Natufian in the middle between Niger Congo and prehistoric recent Northeast African. What were you saying, Ivry?
Hard search language in the paper. Let's see if language is even brought up in the paper. Might be brought up at least once.
Yeah, the Basque language.
No, that's it.
Yeah, that those charts are not talking about languages. And that's it.
Yep, only 2 mentions of languages, and it's done with the Basque language. All right.
Right.
Well, it's all well and good if you read the paper, but even reading the paper and reading the paragraph you just read, if they don't know that orbit and robustness and all those different key terms that actually point to morphology, is talking about morphology, they're still gonna come up with the same conclusion. It's talking about language. You have to understand what you're reading in order to understand that it's not talking about language.
You don't know what, sorry, you saying they don't know what mandible means? And oh God.
That's a big word, brother.
Mandible.
Let's see. Score morphology. Let me see if I can get
the Basque language is linguistic related to other language. And there is a long-held idea that the Basques may represent a modern survival of the Pleistocene human inhabitants of Western Europe. That's true, actually. Heard about
that. We got to give out school morphology classes now, anatomical classes and shit.
Anatomy and physiology. You got to do it.
Oh, my God. All right. Back to the video.
Prehistoric North Africans were. For now, it suffices to say that they were also black Africans. So this is a reconstruction of a Natufian from Jericho. I like this facial reconstruction as it shows that he looks exactly like Common.
It's funny, Paul. I actually used this way back in the day on one of my videos because of the somewhat similarity that you can see. But yeah, this was used way back, I think in 2020. Yeah, 2020, something like that. But yeah, like I said, the Natufians, in terms of their morphology, is in between a Niger Congo and basically a Mediterranean person. So they kind of had like a mixed morphology, and even genetically, they're kind of mixed. I have their autosomes pulled up right here, but I'm going to wait till we get deeper into the video to show what type of autosomal makeup that they had. But go ahead.
So the high prevalence of E1b1 haplogroup that we see in the Levant and some part of the first.
I'm sorry to tell you to pause so much, but this is another image that that I've used in the past when it comes to different ancient Near Eastern populations that were genuinely dark skinned. Like, not saying that there wasn't any type of dark skinned people in the ancient Near East. There definitely was, and this is like a legit screenshot from my video. I might actually pull up the video that I first showed it in, but you can go ahead and pause it.
Fertile Crescent is in fact a testament to the African expansion of civilization. Its highest historical concentration is in the Niger-Congo, and it spreads out towards the Levant to become the Natufian, before becoming, much later on, absorbed by the immigrant populations.
Yeah, there's a lot of pausing in this section, but yeah, this is another example. This is actually another screenshot, and basically it's breaking down the morphology again. That the Natufians had somewhat of a negroid appearance. One thing I want to make clear though is that he said this is proving I think an African migration into the Near East. And really, what actually could be going on is that it's not really representing African migration into the Near East, but rather that some Near Eastern populations, even in the Bronze Age, still had a Natufian-like morphology. I don't think it necessarily has to automatically equal Africans going into the Near East. Although that's also true, I'm not saying Africans didn't. But another thing to keep in mind is that some Near Easterners still retain a somewhat Natufian look, like the Southern Arabians, the Yemeni people. They're pretty dark skinned, and they still retain somewhat of that Natufian morphology, but just a little bit on the Near Eastern side. But yeah, you can go ahead if you want.
There are plenty of scholarly articles that validate this fact. I won't cite them all. But here is one interesting publication from the New York Times nonetheless, where the Natufians are described as a negroid people by Sir Arthur, with wide faces, flat noses, and long, large heads. In other words, the typical African. Skeletal remains of those practicing the Natufian culture date from the transition from the Neolithic to the Paleolithic. The Natufians were of medium stature. Their skulls were also dolichocephalic, with broad, short faces, and a tendency towards prognathism. This was clarified in the book Paleopathology and the Origins of Agriculture by Mark Nathan Cohen and George G. Amalagas. Both dolichocephaly and prognathism are key traits of African populations. Dr. Joseph Lizarides and Dr. Naden Roland from Harvard performed extensive genetic tests on Natufian archaeological remains. And
when it comes to the dolichocephalic skull, he is right on one point that the dolichocephalic skull is seen in Africa, particularly among a lot of people who carry haplogroup E. they typically have that skull shape. But at the same time, it is found among Mediterranean populations who don't have dark skin, like Mediterranean Jews and Greeks and the Amazigh, the Berbers, and people of that nature. It's found in the Near East among Arabs. And also, the dolichocephalic skull is also seen as far as Australia, and even in Northern Europe among the Nordic peoples. Nordic peoples have a dolichocephalic skull because basically a dolichocephalic skull is a long skull. There's various different skull shapes. You have the round skull shape, the dolichocephalic, which is the more longer skull shape. And it's not just an African skull shape. It's European, it's Mediterranean, it's Near Eastern, it's Australian. So just keep that in mind. It's not just African. But anyways, go ahead.
And this is what they found. Natufians had clear African DNA markers without any Neanderthal admixture.
All right, this is
It
another
isn't too
thought.
long after that, the
All right, so Natufians did have small amounts of Neanderthal ancestry. And did he also say that they had African ancestry? I'm trying to make sure I heard that right.
We can rewind it back. He said they had clear genetic markers. Let's go back.
had clear African DNA markers.
Clear African DNA markers. That's what he said.
Okay, so that is, yeah, that's true. They did have E1B1B, which you can arguably say is African. But if he's trying to say that they were E1B1A, now that's a completely different story. Or if they were haplogroup A or haplogroup B or anything of that nature. The Natufians did not have haplogroup A or B or E1B1A. They had specific downstream of E1B1B, and I can actually pull it up here. Let me see. I'll share my screen.
They weren't only E1B1B2. You do have that individual that have haplogroup H amongst them.
Well, that wasn't a Natufian. That was pre-Pottery Neolithic. It was a little bit later.
It's dated to 12,700 with the Natufians. Oh, never mind. I see it. You're right.
All right, here's the paper that deals with the Natufian remains, and it has a map right here. Let's see. Yeah, right here.
Oh yeah, that's a real good paper right there.
Is that blurry? Hold on, let me make it.
That's a great paper.
Yeah, this is really good because it deals with not only the Natufians but also the Ibero-Maurusians. So this, that's Africa. All right, there we go. So this is some of the PPNB samples, which is pre-Pottery Neolithic Jordan. Not quite Natufian, but it is pre-Pottery Neolithic, and they carried a specific E1B1B that's actually found very heavily among Morocco Ibero-Maurusians. Well, they descend from like the same particular branch, this branch. But the Natufian one is right here, Middle Easterners, Ancient Levant, where it has it right here, Natufian, and another Jordan PPNB, pre-Pottery Neolithic B. And they carried E1B1B, 1B2. And I believe the specific downstream of that is EM123, if I remember correctly. But this isn't typical of African Americans or West Africans. Like most West Africans carry E1B1A, most African Americans carry E1B1A. So this particular E1B1B is like I said, you can arguably say it's African, but it's not necessarily West Central African. And as a matter of fact, when it comes to the populations that Natufians are genetically closest to, this is a PCA chart. And when it comes to populations, Natufians fall in between the Turfal or the Ibero-Maurusians, as well as the Levant Neolithic, and basically Eurasian populations. The Natufians are genetically Eurasian. They're not genetically African from a PCA standpoint, and also from an autosomal standpoint. This paper deals with the autosomes of the Natufians. Skip down to the relevant portion. And I'm not saying that the Natufians didn't have any African DNA at all, but their overwhelming genome was Eurasian. Here's the Natufian breakdown. The Natufian sample consists of 61.2% Arabian. So they're mostly genetically Arabian. I would argue that that is a bulk of this Arabian would actually be basal Eurasian. And then there were 21.2% Northern African, and this would be more like Ibero-Maurusian Northern African. And then there were 10.9% Western Asian, which is, it's a Eurasian genome. And then there were 6.8% Omotic ancestry, which is more East African. So the Natufians genetically weren't, Yoruba or Mande, as a lot of, because Yoruba and Mande is typically used as proxies in DNA tests, and Natufians didn't have that type of ancestry. So yeah, the only thing really African.
Hold on real quick, Ibri. I'm sorry, bro.
Yeah, go ahead.
Read that last sentence. The transition from.
The transition from the Neolithic period to the Bronze Age involved and acquisition of principal Western Asian ancestry with similar contributions of Southern European and Southern Asian ancestry. So
yeah, that's huge, because in his world and his made up jargon in his video, he makes it seem as if it should be the opposite. It should just be a large influx of sub-Saharan African DNA or African DNA in general. But we don't see that. And that's what the Natufians are showing you. That's a large influx of West Asian ancestry.
Yeah, the paper actually, I think somewhere up here, it kind of goes into the, hold on. Yeah, like this whole paper deals with the world in terms of the genetics that pour in. I think it's right here. It deals with the massive migration from the Caucasus into the Near East. Let's see. Ancient Iranians were characterized through the late Neolithic period by predominantly Southern Asian ancestry. No, I don't think that's it. The proportion of Western Asian.
The paper said it. The paper said it right there. The acquisition of principally, meaning primarily Western Asian ancestry.
Oh, here it is. The proportion of Western Asian ancestry doubled through the Iron Age. So you had a large influx during the Iron Age. And it says the ancient Armenians resemble the Georgian hunter-gatherers in having a mixture of Western Asian and Southern Asian ancestries. I actually covered this a lot dealing with populations from the north going into the Near East, but I don't want to go too deep on a tangent with this. But basically, yeah, Natufians were mostly genetically Eurasian. The only thing African about them would be the E1B1B sample. They weren't E1B1A. But anyways, yeah, go ahead.
Right. Also, someone said earlier, Sankofa says he wants us to use just autosomal. Okay, fine, use autosomal. Autosomally, these people will be largely Western Asian, not Sub-Saharan African. End of discussion. You guys want to run to autosomal. This does not make your case any better. Again, autosomal is just admixture. Sex chromosomes show you direct ancestry.
Yeah, I mean, even E1B1A autosomally in origin likely wasn't West Central African. E1B1A coming from East Africa likely had a completely different genome than most E1B1A people have today. It likely had a more East African genome than it did a West African genome. So that's the slight issue with autosomes. I'm not saying you shouldn't use it, but you have to keep everything in context, especially when you're dealing with migration patterns and things of that nature.
Yep.
But I think that is it I wanted to touch on in terms of the genome. Let me see. Yeah, you can go back to the video. The only other thing I would say is that the mitochondrial DNA, I don't have this pulled up, but the mitochondrial DNA of the Natufians is J2A2 and N1B. That's the female lineage of the Natufians.
Yep.
But
that's Eurasian. I got it here. I can show it. So yeah, that's definitely Eurasian.
Yes, and by the way, mitochondrial J2, not Y DNA J2. It's mitochondrial.
Yeah. J2A2, J2A2. Haplogroup H, which we know is a Eurasian, European mitochondrial group. These women here are clearly Eurasian. Like, you can't get around that. The women that are birthing these children, birthing these Natufians, are Eurasian. N1B, J2A2, and haplogroup H is what we see in the Natufian samples. And anybody can pull this up and go to haplotree.info and then type what part of the world you want to look up ancient DNA from, and you'll get it right there. Boom. This is not Illuminati secret information here. You know.
Without any Neanderthal admixture. It isn't too long after that, the Natufians propagated the idea of agriculture and their technology to the rest of the Fertile Crescent and the Nile Valley. And it is there, a few millennia later, that their descendants would kickstart the two most influential civilizations in history. And we will start by finding out who were those that started the smaller of these civilizations.
Let's go! Put your hands together.
Oh my God, we touched on this briefly yesterday because he tried to make the connection, but we try to make Sumerians wholly African and Black African. This is the main goal of this channel and video, is to try to make every population he brings up. He's going to bring up the Sumerians, the Etruscans, the Pelasgians, the early Greeks. He's going to bring up all these groups and try to say they're all Black, they're all Black African. And I mean, this is just. It's not scholastic. One, it's charlatan behavior, and it's sloppy, and it's indolent because you're not really putting the hours and time behind the message. You're not giving these people thorough, research here. You're just throwing out things that have been regurgitated over the years and hoping it sticks.
Sumer. I am a strong subscriber to the value for value model. If you feel that this channel has brought you and your loved ones some value, I would be immensely grateful if you would consider returning that value in any way you can. Either in the form of subscriptions to the channel or Patreon, or through sharing it with others so we can get the word out. As one of the most influential civilizations in history, the Sumerians need no introduction. Authors of the Epic of Gilgamesh, excellent mathematicians and astronomers, they are even said to have invented the wheel and invented our way of telling time, with the 60 seconds and 60 minutes hour. Since the archaeological discovery of civilization, it has been assumed that ancient Sumerians.
The wheel part is inaccurate. It's pretty much been established that it was Proto-Indo-Europeans, the Yanaya culture, that formed the wheel in the northern part of the Caucasus, modern-day Ukraine, and then spread the wheel from there all throughout Eurasia. The Sumerians did not invent the wheel. I just wanted to quickly point that out.
Yeah, you guys always big on ancestry. Will say, "Well, my ancestors did this." Well, maybe your ancestors did, because again, if you're most likely the people that watch us are African Americans, and our population consists of R1B carriers, and R1B carriers overlap with Yamnaya. That is the ancestral history of R1B carriers as far as M269 goes in Europe. So, I mean, you got a rich history. You got the wheel carriers, the people of the chariot, the people that first do metallurgy. The 18th dynasty of Egypt is pretty much your ancestry if you're R1B, because Akhenaten and those folks, they were R1B. So be proud of your legacy. You don't have to make up this confabulation that this guy's making up of history.
Sumerians resembled modern inhabitants of the region. We now understand that to be false. In fact, Sumerians, especially early Sumerians, those who established the foundation of the civilization, from writing to religion to the wheel and more, those founding population of Sumer were what we would call Black African. And this has been known for 200 years, but not publicly shared. We already saw how carriers of the E1B1 marker, coming out of the last ice age and entering the Bronze Age, invented agriculture in the Levant and then spread out. In fact, there is interesting research that is now emerging that suggests that the Natufians may have very well been behind the building of Göbekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe. Researcher Dr. Dorothy Garrod attests that the Natufians who were living in the Middle East since
before he goes deep into Göbekli Tepe, to just touch on the Sumerians real quick. The Sumerians likely carried haplogroup J. I actually did a very deep dive video into the Sumerians. And there's a lot of connections between the Sumerians and Caucasian populations in terms of like some cultural elements and language. Like if you dig into the Nakdangistan language, as well as Hurru-Uratrian, there is a lot of similarities with that and Sumerian. But just keep in mind, though, that overwhelmingly linguists would say that Sumerian is a language isolate, so it doesn't belong to any language family. But with that being said, when it comes to groups like the Marsh Arabs, which carry haplogroup J at almost, I think, 80 to 90%, it is pretty much strongly believed that those Marsh Arabs, who have very similar cultural elements to the Sumerians, are likely the descendants of the Sumerians. With that being said, I'm not saying that there was never any E markers in Sumer or that there was never any E markers in Mesopotamia. I'm not saying that. There more than likely was E markers in Mesopotamia and among the Sumerians. But the Sumerians overwhelmingly seem to have been J markers. And in terms of morphology, he kind of cherry picked photos of the Sumerians. If we want to play the phenotype game, I mean, I can play it too. And the Sumerians, and by the way, hold on, before I go too deep into the phenotype, I just want to show you all this paper right here, changing the screen to shoot. This is a good paper to read. Hold on, did it go there? All right, there we go. This is a good paper to read if you want to look into the likely genome of the Sumerians. In search of genetic footprints of Sumerians, a survey of Y chromosome and mtDNA variation in the Marsh Arabs of Iraq. And I actually covered this paper in my video, but basically, a lot of the Marsh Arabs, who are likely the descendants of the Sumerians, they carry a haplogroup J. But before I go deep into that, I want to show y'all another photo of what Sumerians look like, because like I said, he kind of cherry picked some of the images, and those images he showed, I think those were actually Gutians. They weren't even Sumerians. But let me just pull up these Sumerian statues, only because we're playing the phenotype thing. So here are Sumerian statues. And the Sumerians, phenotypically, I would argue that they look pretty much no different than how the people in modern day Iraq look in other parts of the Near East. Like they basically have very hooked noses, like Middle Easterners, and you know, black, long, wavy hair, and things of that nature. Like some of the times they're even depicted with blue eyes, but there's different possible reasons as to why they have blue eyes. I'm not going to say that they were blue-eyed, but some could have been. I mean, blue eyes did exist in this time. It was in the Levant in the Chalcolithic, so I don't see why it wouldn't be in Mesopotamia. But yeah, keep in mind, Sumerians, they seem to have been more of a Near Eastern people, I will argue, having hooked noses, black curly hair, and probably tanned to white skin. So, yeah, actually,
he did the same thing yesterday with Egypt. he cherry picked the images that he wanted to show. He didn't show all the damn Egyptian, or a good sample of Egyptian images to make his
Right.
claim.
Exactly. Here's the standard of Ur, and the people on the standard of Ur look very similar to the statues that I just showed you, and they have. Hold on, let me see if I can get an HD image. They basically have, they're basically bald and have hooked noses, like a lot of Middle Easterners, and things of that nature. So I'm only doing that because we're kind of playing the whole phenotype thing. Like, he just showed a few images of, I think, Gutians. I'm pretty sure those black statues were Gutians. They weren't Sumerians. I have to. Let me actually look that up real quick. Gutian statues. And Gutians, by the way, were from the Zagros Mountains. They weren't Sumerian. Yeah, no, I was right. Let me share my image again. Push this. Gutian statues. He kept showing this guy and the other guy, and these are Gutians. And what's interesting about the Gutians is that they were actually the people who conquered the Akkadians. They came in and sacked Mesopotamia during the Dark Age of the Near East, and basically ruled for about 100 years. And they came from the Zagros Mountains, which is in Iran, oddly enough. And they likely spoke, it's believed, if you dig into like the different books that deal with the language, it's believed that Gutians may have actually spoken an Indo-European language or a Hurrian language. And Hurrian, by the way, is a Caucasian language from the Caucasus. And obviously we know what Indo-European is. That's the Indo-European language belongs to the Indo-European people. But yeah, so he kept showing images of Gutians, not Sumerians, when it comes to these black statues. But anyways, you can go back to the video. I just wanted to clear that up.
Wait, did you say he trying to show images of Gucci? No, I'm just
Gucci Mane. I also want to bring this up too, Avery. Again, anybody can go to haplotree.info, type in Turkey, Göbekli Tepe. Let me show y'all that first, because you mentioned Göbekli Tepe. It was inhabited around 9,500 to at least 8,000 BCE, right? So you can look up the haplogroups that were there around that time. You see haplogroup C there in the Anatolian Turkey region. You see, of course, DE there a little later, and E a little later there as well. F, haplogroup G. Shout out to the Tail twins. They have ancestry, deep ancestry. You see 8,000 years ago, going back to Turkey. G2A back 10,000 years. So this will be around the time of Göbekli Tepe. So we do see a Eurasian presence there. A bunch of G2A. We can just go down this list. Some J markers coming in the mix around 8,000 years ago. And then a bunch of Eurasian female markers dating to the time of Göbekli Tepe, about 10,000 years ago. N1, A1, U3, N1, K1, K1. A bunch of Eurasian people there in that land. So his idea of it being wholly African is just not supported with the data at all. And again, the retort will be, oh, you can't trust nobody. They all lying. The only person that's trustworthy is my channel. That's it, me. Anyway.
And also give me money while you're at it.
You said what, Avery?
And also give me money, because I'm the most trustworthy.
Yeah, also pay me as well. Pay me.
He would have been behind the construction of Göbekli Tepe soon after the Holocene period began. Although more research on this subject needs to be done, It stands to reason that the Natufians would have had the agricultural backing and specialization sophistication necessary to build the sites. As to the identity of the Sumerians and where they hailed from, it was made clear by Albert Terrien de la Couperie. Born in France, de la Couperie was a well-known linguist and China expert. Although native of France, most of his writings are in English. In the journal he published called The Babylonian and Oriental Record, he outlined many aspects of ancient history. In these pages he made it clear that the Sumerians, Akkadians, and even the Assyrians, who called themselves Shalmat Kakadi, black-headed people, were all blacks of Kushite origin. So then, one might ask, why is it that the majority of the depictions of the Sumerians that we see are Semite and Caucasians? And never do we see the African phenotypes that actually started the civilization. To make the Sumerians European.
All right, here's the problem here. I'm going to stop it there. Here's the problem I got with this part of the video. African phenotype, using these terms. Oh, they only showing the Caucasian ones. They're not showing the African ones. And the African ones were there first, and they started everything, spearheaded everything. This is why we got to take out the time to do a little reading. All right. So we covered this paper. This is a genetic probe into the ancient and modern Eurasia, I believe it is. Hold on, let me get the title up here. Here's the paper. A genetic probe into the ancient and medieval history of Southern Europe and West Asia. Lazarus et al. This brand new paper that came out last year. So we're going to go all the way down to the section where it talks about skin color, because these people exhumed the dead bodies that are in this region known as the Southern Arc, and they were able to do a phenotypic analysis on what skin tone these people had, what hair color they had, and what eye color they had. And they found a resounding evidence that majority of these people will be intermediate, and we're going to touch on that here in a minute. So a lot of times when you see these brown skin or dark skin representations and like mosaics and stuff of that nature, it's reflecting true ancestry, true history. But that does not mean everybody here that has that dark skin or have this, what he called the African phenotype, which is a misnomer, are the same, or they all come from this sub-Saharan African source. Does not mean it at all. It just means humans have a common, like we brought up earlier, common morphology. The further back you go in time, that's all. And common phenotype. So here it is, phenotypes of the Southern Arc in their West Eurasian context. Our survey of populations of the Southern Arc focuses on ancestry, but it also illuminates other aspects of biology. Superficial phenotypes such as pigmentation were remarked upon by ancient writers. We carried out a survey of predicted pigmentation and other phenotypes of West Eurasian populations across time to discover the extent to which ancient authors' perceptions based on direct observation or through accounts of faraway peoples might correspond to the genetic inference of their appearances. We find that the model phenotype of eye, skin, and hair pigmentation in ancient West Eurasians was brown-eyed, of intermediate complexion, and brown-haired, even among the Yamnaya steppe pastoralists, contradicting stereotypical characterizations of steppe people as being blue-eyed, pale-skinned, and light-haired. Note that when we use categorizations such as intermediate of the continuous skin tone phenotype, we refer to the scheme adopted by Hyrasplex-S. And real quick, before I continue reading this, because I want y'all to understand this, many of these people in Western Asia for the last 10,000 years, majority of them would have what they call an intermediate skin tone. So you want to think many people, Ben Baby, you want to think modern Mediterranean people, a lot of Greeks, modern Greeks have this skin tone of what they call intermediate. And we can go to, I believe I have it loaded up here, to the Hyrasplex-S. Let me pull it up. Skin graph. And you can clearly see what skin tone these guys are referencing here. And this will be your makeup here. So this here is your intermediate skin tone. The next one is dark skin. So majority of the West Eurasian world, according to the hundreds of samples that they have, would have looked something like this skin color here. So it's not surprising once you know the information that you're going to have people with what we call darker or brown skin tones in these depictions, because that would be the norm during that time, during the Bronze Age and Neolithic times. The norm would be people in the intermediate zone or spectrum. All right, so let's go back to the paper. It says, in that scheme, intermediate skin tones are commonly found in present-day Mediterranean populations and pale ones in present-day Northern European ones. A general, I want y'all to understand this too, because all humans started off with darker skin tones. So you got to understand this portion as well. A general depigmentation trend can be seen across time. So again, like we said earlier, the further you go back in time, the darker populations get. When you get to the present, that's when we start seeing populations to lighten up or get paler. It says here, with a reduction of black hair and darker skin tones accompanying the increase of brown hair and intermediate skin tones. However, inhabitants of the southern arc had significantly darker pigmentation on average than those of the north, defined as Europe, outside southern arc, and the Eurasian steppe over all periods. So the Eurasia, Mesopotamia, when we're talking about the Levant, they're typically darker than the Europeans or Northern Europeans. It says here, which provides support for the identification by ancient writers of light pigmentation phenotypes as being more common in some groups of the north, such as the Celts and Scythians. Another contrast made by the ancient writers was with people of Africa, such as Egyptians and Ethiopians, who were said to be of darker pigmentation. A comparison of people of the southern arc with their southern neighbors will become possible when genomic data from people living south of the Mediterranean become available. When examining composite pigmentation phenotypes, we observed that although average pigmentation did differentiate between populations of the southern arc and the north, light phenotypes were found in both areas at similar early dates, growing in parallel in the more recent millennia of history. So the more we get to the modern times, that's when we start seeing people get paler, or you start seeing the pale white phenotype become more numerous than it was in the past. It says here, light pigmentation in West Eurasia was a result of selection across time, which continued into the historical period, and not of the survival of supposed ancient Indo-European phenotypes, as some 19th and 20th century writers suppose, or the product of direct influence of climate that some Greco-Roman writers hypothesized to explain patterns they observed during their own time. The malleability of human phenotypes across time in the presence of diverse ones, whether dark, light, or intermediate across space, undermine prejudiced views of history that overemphasize superficial traits. And that's what we're seeing on this video. He's overemphasizing superficial traits, and he's trying to use that to blanket ancestry and say, okay, since we see darker people in Mesopotamia or in Syria or in Anatolia, therefore these are these purely African people that were there. No, that's not what that's showing. As we just read, that's a common thread to have these intermediate brown skin to dark skinned people in these regions. So what's the point? There are different ancestries. They just look dark. That's it. You're overemphasizing these traits.
A great example is good old Chatterman. Chatterman was said to range from dark brown to black skin, and
Exactly.
he had haplogroup I, which is typical of like Scandinavians and stuff, like people like that. So he was dark, super dark.
Watch this. It says across space undermine prejudiced views of history that overemphasize superficial traits at the expense of the more meaningful aspects of human culture and biology. All right, y'all just looking at how people look and then try to determine the whole story based off that. So we're going to look at chart B here, which deals with skin color here. And look, the further you go back in time, the darker the populations get. Right? The further you go back in time. So the dark brown is dark to black. The brown is dark, and intermediate is the tan color, and pink is pale. As you can see, pale skin is rare in these regions and non-existent when you go before 10,000 years, and then it picks up speed towards the historical period, 2,000 years and later. But majority of the history here are melanated peoples. This does not mean they all descend from the same people. This does not mean they're all cousins or they all share the same core biology. Does not mean that at all. It just means during that time, there was common skin tones in those regions, like Anatolia, Mesopotamia, and the Aegean Sea region. So just because you see depictions of darker or brown-skinned people does not mean it automatically draws an ancestral connection between other people that you deem like Niger Congo speakers or whatnot, dark skin. It does not do that. East Indians are dark skinned. There's dark Iraqis. It does not mean that you have somehow share direct ancestry with those groups. You know, we got to beat that out of your head because, again, you're using these superficial traits to undermine actual core biology, actual ancestry, and who people groups literally descend from. That's why I had to show you guys the haplogroups that were discovered in ancient Turkey during the time of Göbekli Tepe. Because you're going to exclude all that and just go off of skin color and how people may have looked during that time. So when we go from there, let me go to the supplemental real quick of this paper. And it breaks down what these people may have looked like during the times. So we got a bunch of Turkey samples. We got a bunch of Russian samples, Italian samples, which is going to be pertinent to this video because he is going to be dealing with the Etruscans. The beaker. Let's go here to Iran. So when you look at Iran, you can see what the phenotype of these people have been. As you can see, the Iranians would have been 42.5% dark skin of the samples would have been dark skin. 17.5% of them would have been dark to black skin. So you do have a darker or black skin population in ancient times. Again, that does not mean those individuals that exhibit those phenotypes are directly connected to other groups that exhibit those phenotypes or somehow saying that they're sub-Saharan African. It don't mean that.
Exactly. It doesn't mean that these dark-skinned people are Yoruba and Mandinka and Kenyans. These are not even B1A, or haplogroup A, haplogroup B people. They have completely different, although they're dark-skinned, their genomes are completely different. Their genomes are Eurasian, Y-DNA, mtDNA, autosomal DNA, PCA analysis, all Eurasian. These are not Niger Congo people. But anyways, go ahead. I just want to say that.
Exactly. And look, 40% intermediate. So, just about as many dark-skinned people you see there, you're going to run into intermediate skin about the same as 0% pale skin. Right? Even in Russia, you see the same trend. No pale skin, but you do see dark-skinned and intermediate skin peoples in ancient times. The further you go back in time, the more color they get. Right? And it does not mean an alien race came down here and had sex with humans. That's not what that means. This mutation and adaptation, that's it. That does not require some ancillary explanation to why the skin color got lighter over time. Right? As you see, the beaker culture, majority of it was intermediate. They had a very small pale skin population at 6.3% of those samples. Quarterwear, same thing, 80% intermediate and 20% dark skin. So again, when you start, let's go to Italy because he's going to touch on that here in a minute. Let's go to Italy. Italy, late antiquity. You see that? 71% of it intermediate, 28% dark skin. So when you see these pictures, when you go to like the tomb of leopards, if you type in tomb of leopards in Google, you're going to see dark skin or brown skin individuals on the tomb of leopards. That does not mean they're Yoruba, Mandinka peoples. That just means there were dark skinned people living there. That's it. You can't draw any other inference from that. All right, so let's go back to the video.
Textbooks print pictures of artifacts dating to the Gutian rule of Lagash to pass them off as the true originators of Sumerian civilization. No Gutian rulers of Lagash are recognized in the Sumerian king list.
I just took a mood aroused gummy.
No, I just took a mood bedtime.
No,
Ooh, how long does it take to get?
no archaeologists, by the way, ever said that the Gutians are the true rulers of Sumer. Everybody knows that the Gutians conquered the Akkadians, and well, first the Sumerians were there, then the Akkadians conquered the Sumerians, and then the Gutians came in and conquered the Akkadians, and they only ruled that area of Mesopotamia for about 100 years. So no archaeologist says Gutians are the true Sumerians or anything of that nature. But and he's making that point because it's a pretty known fact that the Gutians are like a Zagros people, like they were not Sumerians at all. But at the same time, earlier he showed literal statues of Gutians and not Sumerians. So it's kind of funny when you think about it. But anyways.
One of the most notable of these ancient reliefs is the victory stele of Naram-Sin, the third Akkadian king. According to Dr. Wesley Mohammed, the stele depicts Naram-Sin's military victory over a Negrito people in the Zagros Mountains plain of Iran. This, along with the Narmer palette, are amongst my all-time favorite steles. Admire already the refined details on this sculpture. Notice the ornate attire of Naram-Sin, his scepter and bow. Of particular interest, we notice how the people of Zagros sport typical Afros and Afro phenotypes. So, not only the Akkadian were Black African, but the surrounding people were also phenotypically African. All this follows exactly the genetic and linguistic evidence that we have reviewed earlier. So what about the early first cities of Mesopotamia? Who started them?
That image he showed, I remember it when I was looking at some of the archaeology dealing with Mesopotamia, and did he say that's Naram-Sin?
He said Naram-Sin was the one that was striking down the alleged Africans in that picture. He used Dr. Wesley Muhammad. That's a pseudo as a source. And he tried to say, he was striking the Africans down. That proved that the surrounding population were all Africans as well, Black Africans.
It's funny that he says that because Naram-Sin of Akkad was an Akkadian. He was an Akkadian. He was a king of the Akkadian Empire. And Akkadians, of course, as you know, they're Semites. And earlier in the video, he was explaining how Semites are Africans. So is he? So what? He's saying an African conquered other Africans in Mesopotamia, or that Naram-Sin was a white guy conquering Africans?
It's confusing. I don't know, but the overarching theme is to say that it was inundated. This area was inundated with Black Africans. That's basically what he's trying to get to. Even though he's contradicting and confusing, the message that he's trying to send.
He is very much so, because if he's saying Naram-Sin was a Gutian, that's not true. He was a Akkadian Semite. He was not a Gutian.
What about the early first cities of Mesopotamia? Who started them? After genetic and linguistic evidence, perhaps the best evidence of Black Africans starting the Sumerian civilization are the cranial classifications found in the early dynastic period in Mesopotamia. The British Museum of Natural History holds the largest collection of Kish remains. These were analyzed and classified by anthropologist Faris Supia using Fordisk 2.0 to determine the affinities of the individuals and the population as a whole. Fordisk 2.0, the forensic discriminant program, enables precise classification of the ethnic origin given a cranial sample. Notice here that the reading of Egyptian refers to the Nubio-Kemetic stocks, which we have already seen, is indistinguishable from Africans living south of the Sahara. Same goes for other non-Eurasian classifications that are directly attributable to Africans. And it shows clearly that the predominant associations were African, as you can see on the summary table of the analysis. Furthermore, consistent with the previous data, the presence of non-African stock starts to.
All right, so he's saying that the Kish remains were more African. Now, to clear a few things up, the facial morphology of the Kish remains, and by the way, Kish, the people of Kish, were a Semitic people. They were specifically Eastern Semitic, being very similar to like Akkadians and things of that nature. And the facial morphology, he's right. It is said that they had a more Africoid phenotype. But again, what we have to keep in mind is that doesn't mean that they were Niger-Congo or Bantu or anything of that nature. What likely is going on is that some peoples in the Near East still retained the morphology of people like the Natufians and things of that nature, like the Yemenis and Bedouin populations who are still dark-skinned and slightly robust, you know, and they also happen to have the most Natufian ancestry. That's what's likely going on with the people of Kish. They're likely, they potentially could have had high amounts of Natufian ancestry, and therefore that's why they had features that were more robust. But again, that doesn't mean that they were Yoruba or Mande. So I want to make that point clear. Is there anything you want to add, Yashub, or you can keep playing?
Increase only in the late period. This shows that just like in the ancient Nubio-Kemet, millennia after the Africans had established the civilization along with all its defining elements, surrounding people not only started to immigrate to Kish and the rest of Mesopotamia, but invaders also brought in new people who over centuries inherited the science, culture, and land of the Kishites, Babylonians, and Akkadians. So far, we have seen how the Natufians, who were black, branched off into the Levant and North Africa, where they expanded their agricultural practices into grandiose civilizations. They also went westward to establish another mysterious civilization in the most unlikely of places. Our journey continues in Libya's southern edge. In the 1960s, an astonishing find was unveiled, the preserved remains of a young boy called Uwan Muhujaj. Back then, the Sahara was a lush and green savanna. Today, Libya is distinctively Middle Eastern. However, in 3600 BC bore witness to a southern Libya inhabited by black Africans, a fact inferred from DNA studies and copious rock art across the ancient Sahara. The genetic analysis of Uwan Muhujaj not only confirmed these findings, but also shed light on a previously unknown African culture. The sophistication of the mummification process.
So he's trying to make a connection between Uwan Muhujaj, may have mispronounced it, sorry, and the Natufians, and just want to make a few things clear. Natufians are Eurasian. So when the Natufians are migrating into places like North Africa and East Africa, they're actually bringing Eurasian genes into Africa, not African genes, because Natufians are genetically mostly Eurasian. And there's actually charts that show an influx of Levantine ancestry into places like North Africa and East Africa. A lot of East Africans in the Horn have like Neolithic Levantine ancestry. This is Eurasian, not African. When it comes to Uwan Muhujaj, there's a little bit of debate on him. It's likely that either he was like basically a black African, sub-Saharan African, or he was mixed. But with that being said, there may not be a connection between Mahan Jujaj and the Natufians. Like he may have been like basically an actual like sub-Saharan African that was living in North Africa rather than a descendant of a Natufian going into Africa. That's the connection he's going to try to make. But you can go ahead.
The process of the young boy showed that already in Western Sahara, the West Africans had already mastered that science. But they didn't just leave mummies. They also left stone constructions that scientists are still studying today. It is even stipulated that the famous Eye of the Sahara might be one of the relics of this once ancient and glorious civilization. Western Sahara is still one of the least studied areas in archaeology. The harsh climate and the rampant insecurity of the region means that many of its secrets are still to be revealed. Approximately 500 years after Uwan Muhujaj's mummification, the once lush savanna began to recede, succumbing to aridness. Driven eastwards in search of water, these people converged with another remarkable group from Central Africa at the Nile. This group, known for creating the 20,000-year-old Ishango bone, demonstrated a deep understanding of advanced math, including relationships between prime numbers. But that's a story for another day. A few millennia later, it is the descendants of these Western Sahara Africans that would create yet another remarkable nation, the Garamantes. The Garamantes were an ancient civilization that existed around 500 BCE to 700 CE. They lived in the Saharan region, in what is now modern-day Libya. Their civilization was centered around the Fezzan region, which was an oasis area crucial for survival in the harsh desert environment. The Garamantes were known for their advanced irrigation systems, which they used to channel water from underground aquifers to their fields, allowing them to practice agriculture in the desert. They grew crops like barley and wheat, and also raised livestock. They established a network of underground tunnels, known as fogaras, to transport water from aquifers to their farms. This innovative system showcased their ingenuity and ability to adapt to their challenging environment. The Garamantes played a crucial role in trade across the Sahara, connecting the Mediterranean world to the interior of Africa. They traded goods like ivory, ostrich feathers, and exotic animals from sub-Saharan Africa to the Roman and later Byzantine empires. Garamantes had superb constructions that were very Nubian-like. They built small pyramids and had elaborate town networks. Between 1 and 700 AD samples were gathered, showing cranial perforation, indicating advanced surgical knowledge. In the ancient text Claudius Ptolemy Geography, we clearly see that the Garamantes were black. And I quote, "Each of these statements, on the face of it, is incredible. First, because the Ethiopians are not so far distant from the Garamantes as to require 3 months' journey, seeing that the government is Edom themselves for the most part, Ethiopians, and have the same king. In Archaeology of the Fezzan, C.M. Daniels shows that, quote, Garamantes cluster mostly to sub-Saharan African and secondarily to Roman Egyptians from Alexandria and Nubians. Here, I would like to remind you that Egypt.
Yeah, I was about to pause it too, man.
So just to make something really quick and clear. So the Garamantes, all right, so they're an ancient Amazigh people, Berber people, and they did live in basically the center area of the Sahara, like Libya, some parts of Algeria. And he's saying that it seems to be that he's saying that they were all just Black African. The Garamantes, in reality, seem to have been basically somewhat of a mixed population of people. You would have had Black Garamantes, that's true, but you also would have had light-skinned, like the typical North African-looking people among the Garamantes as well. As a matter of fact, the population of people today that are likely the descendants of Garamantes are the Tuareg peoples. And the Tuareg peoples have a mixture of phenotypes ranging from Black all the way to like, Mediterranean tanned skin. So you can't paint the whole Garamantes ethnic group as being just purely sub-Saharan African. It was a mixture of different peoples. They would have had sub-Saharan African autosomes and Y chromosomes and mtDNA chromosomes, but they also would have had Eurasian autosomes and Y DNA chromosomes and mtDNA chromosomes. Just take a look at Tuareg peoples, and you'll basically will be getting a good example of what the Garamantes look like. I guess I can pull up some Garamantes while Jashu says what he needs to say.
Yeah. I want to comment on this as well, and it's just like you said. Just a quick source, right quick. Just go to go to Wikipedia and type in Garamantes. That's all you gotta do here. Go down and deal with the history. And it says the earliest known written record to document the Garamantes date to 5th century BC. Herodotus includes the Garamantes in the description of ancient Libyan tribes, describing them as a very great nation who herded cattle and farmed dates. According to Herodotus, the Garamantes used 4-horse chariots to hunt troglodyte Ethiopians. Herodotus states that the Libyans in the north and the Ethiopians in the south of Libya are aboriginal. The Phoenicians and Greeks are later settlers. Libya began being the Greek name for Africa west of the Nile. Besides Herodotus, historic references to the Garamantes also appear in several other Greco-Roman sources. After conducting a comprehensive review of quotes on the Garamantes from various sources, including Strabo, Arnobius, Hentes, Ptolemy, and Solinus, David Matley et al., 2003, concluded clearly the perception of some Roman writers was that some Garamantes were Negroid or very dark skinned, whilst others saw them as essentially aligned with the Berber peoples. This mixed picture most likely reflects the ancient reality. On the evidence of the sources alone, the likelihood is that Garamantes encompassed a mixture of racial types, Berber, Negro, and various levels of miscegenation. So these people would have had a mixed bag of phenotypes. They would not all been dark skinned, all wholly black. They would not have all been lighter skinned or, look like Amazigh today, but they would have been a mixture of that. And that would be more reflective of what actually took place and what the population would have looked like. I don't know what else to say about that. It's just that simple. Again, even ancient Egyptians, when they depict Libyans, the Tamahu, they depict them as being lighter skinned. There's nothing wrong with that, but it is something wrong when we're dealing with an Afrocentric that's just using skin color as a linchpin to determine who's who in history. You got what you wanted, Avery?
Oh no, you can go ahead with the video. You kind of already, you said it. I could pull up images, but what you said was good enough, to be honest.
Descriptions are in whole black. This means that the Garamantes were in totality black. Again, this is not surprising.
There it is. In totality, that's impossible. Again, let's look at the early inhabitants of
I got an image. Oh, wait, never mind. You're going to go to the, what you call it?
Table who?
Here's Tuaregs, who are probably the closest descendants of the Garamantes. And as you can see with this image, you have one that's black and then one that's brown.
Yeah.
Here's another image right here. This is actually, I think, a queen. She's, has a brown skin tone. Looks Amazigh, but you also have some darker people in the back. Here's a Tuareg guy. He has a lighter brown skin complexion. Looks a bit Middle Eastern if he took off all that head stuff. But go with what you got if you have anything. Let me see if I can pull up some more stuff.
Yeah, just ancient depiction of the Tamahu, ancient Libyans we showed yesterday. They were of the lighter variation, man. These were lighter skinned people. It's just that simple. They did exist. There was no holy black nothing. Like, you gotta stop doing that, man. But again, it's a racial purist argument. You gotta make everybody in that particular time frame to fit this idea and mold of what you think they should look like. It just does not work that way.
Here's another image I have. This is a blended family of a Tuaregs right here. light-skinned wife, dark-skinned man, medium-skinned children. This woman, all right, here we go. She might be a foreigner. I'm not for sure. But yeah, just type in Tuaregs and you'll see a swath of different peoples, various skin tones, ranging from light to brown, various phenotypes. Some phenotypes even look a bit East African, a little bit.
Right. And this also goes, you know, a little sidebar here with Hannibal and the Netflix depiction of using what's his name?
Denzel Washington.
Denzel Washington to depict Hannibal. The people of Tunisia and the historical foundation there, or whatever, they're losing their mind because a black man is going to play as Hannibal. If you know the history of North Africa, North Africans have a mixture of, just like we see on the screen here. The Tuaregs are a great example of this. There are darker skinned people and there are lighter skinned people. So it shouldn't even be an issue. That's true anciently and that's true presently. So it should not be an issue. And it's just showing anti-black colorism that is going on today in Tunisia. That's what that's revealing.
Yep. There are a lot of dark-skinned people in amongst the Amazigh peoples, North Africans and stuff like that. Like, they're mixed, different folks. As a matter of fact, well, I don't want to get too deep into that, but yeah, they're a mixture of different peoples. It's obvious. So, yeah, the whole Denzel Washington thing is kind of dumb because genetically speaking, the Carthaginian remains were very, very Berber-esque. So, yeah,
Very silly.
As prehistoric North Africans have been shown to be black. It is not until the Muslim invasion in the 7th and 8th century AD that the genetic makeup of North Africa starts to transform. It isn't.
This is untrue. This is very, like, again, this is a mistruth here, and this is it's far from the case. All right, so real quick, I've been waiting for this portion. And I want to go here and just dispel this. There was no transformation that happened, you know, at the onset of the Muslim expansion. That's just not true. First of all, that's common era. There were already Eurasians traveling back and forth throughout North Africa and in the Levant and even deeper into Africa, because we can see it in the autosomes and people like the Yoruba and stuff of that nature, with a signal going back 7,000 years. So that's just untrue. Eurasia and Africa are connected. We're talking about a landmass that are connected, and we're talking about a history of people going back and forth for thousands of years. What you're essentially saying is the genetic makeup of North Africa was the same until 700. No, that's not what happened. So we're going to go to a book called Africa from MIS 6-2, and we're going to go to page 377 just to clear this nonsense up. So let's just go straight here. It says, therefore, the oldest mtDNA lineages in North Africa, so the oldest females that we find, that's what mtDNA deals with, the female line, in North Africa came from outside of Africa, most probably the Near East. So even when we go into ancient times in North Africa and these regions that he's talking about, we see that it's not genetically pure, and you have components that and people that are deriving from outside of Africa coming into North Africa and coming into places like Morocco, Tunisia, Carthage, Libya, and so on and so forth, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So haplogroup N1 dates to approximately 26,000 and U6 to 35,000 years ago. These dates provide a lower bound for their entrance into North Africa. Again, the person that's creating the video, he's making it seem as if this is an isolate population and you don't get any genetic input from nowhere else until the Muslim expansion in the Common Era. That's just silly, man. And it's sloppy and it's indolent. It's showing that this guy is not doing the proper research before he constructs his videos. And he's sucking a lot of people in through production and the sound and stuff of that nature and how the aesthetics of it all. but the information is just off. It says here, since they both appear to have arisen within North Africa, the age of M and the age of haplogroup U, the ancestor M1 and U6 respectively provide upper bounds for the timing of the back migration. North Africa was therefore probably recolonized between 55 and 35,000 years ago, assuming that the arrival of U6 and M1 was a single process, which seems plausible, but is not entirely clear. Genome-wide data also suggests that North Africa was recolonized in the Pleistocene from a Southwest Asian source with a similar time frame for the indigenous North African lineages. So again, we see an influx of people moving from Southwest Asia into Africa during this time. This is long before Muslim interference and whatnot, a Muslim expansion. You know, it's long before that. So he is completely wrong. And we look at the Ethiopians, we look at the Somalians, they have a Eurasian input that's about 3,000, 4,000 years old. If you look at the Egyptians, they're highly Eurasian. Ancient Egyptians are highly Eurasian. The Ibero-Maurusians, 60% Eurasian. That's showing you that these people are the product of other people that are moving into Africa from outside of it. And again, this is ancient history. This is Bronze, Iron Age, Neolithic, Epi-Neolithic, Upper Paleolithic stuff. This is old migrations. Long before that. This is the damage of Afrocentric and black, all that blackity black stuff that you guys teach. This is the damage. You guys actually try to cover up history and cover up the genetic ancestry of thousands of people to fit your Afrocentric ideology, your race-based ideology. And check this out. These people would have been a dark-skinned, brown-skinned people, but they would have had a different ancestry, as we can see here with the U6 and M1 lineages coming from outside of Africa, migrating into these places. All right, so let's continue reading this. It says, so it is clear that people carrying U6 and M1 lineages are not descendants of the producers of the Middle Stone Age Etruscan industry, right? Which would have been cultivated by Africans, right? They would not have any part of that. They come later. They come from outside of Africa. It says the time of their appearance will fit the appearance of a Eurasian-style Upper Paleolithic blade industry, the Dobbin, which appears before 40,000 years ago in Cyrenaica. Right? So that these people clearly are coming from an Asian, Southern European plain, Mediterranean plain. It says, since the arrival time is not closely constrained by the presence of obvious antecedent lineages in the Near East, the ages of U6 and M1 probably depend primarily on genetic drift within North Africa and do not make the positive association with the Dobbin less plausible. Indeed, they seem to require it if this is the only attested post-Etruscan North African industry of this antiquity. The Bayesian skyline plots of haplogroup U6 and M1, which use genetic diversity to infer population size changes, also suggest population growth approximately 20 to 25,000 years ago, coinciding with the beginning of the Ibero-Maurusian industry in the Maghreb. The pattern is not identical for U6 and M1, possibly implying distinct trajectories, although the autosomal picture from the structure-like analysis implies a single autochthonous North African cluster. This kind of analysis partitions autosomal data sets into genetic clusters, beautifully representing ancestral populations, with the clusters defined by the software, but the number of clusters identified defined by the user. The Ibero-Maurusian Maghreb dates to approximately 22,000 years ago and overlies a nondescript Middle Stone Age flake industry from which it is separated by a sterile layer of several thousand years, which itself overlies the Etruscan. The pattern with U6 and perhaps also M1 implies that modern humans who made the Middle Stone Age industries were not the ancestors of those who made the Ibero-Maurusian. So again, the Etruscans, these are ancient Africans living in those regions. We dealt with it before. Avery brought it out on the channel before, who the Etruscans were from a haplogroup standpoint. But what we see with the Ibero-Maurusians, they're bringing in genetic components of people that don't belong to that culture or that time frame within Africa. I'm just going to say it right here. It says, but rather that these autochthonous North African lineages spread from further east, most likely from the makers of the Dobbin industry, with an ultimately southwestern ancestry. At least for U6, the source for M1 is unresolved. So that's it. There's been people moving in and out of Africa long before the Arabs did it with the Islamic expansion. You got something you want to add, brother?
Yeah, when it comes to haplogroup J, most of North Africa is actually haplogroup E, which is E-M81, and haplogroup J, which is, it's kind of more of the Arab haplogroup. It's kind of minimum in North Africa. Like most North Africans fall under E. So if he's saying like it's a bunch of Arab, men going into North Africa, and that most, if not all, modern day North Africans who are light skinned are a bunch of like J marker Arabs, like, no, most of those light skinned North Africans actually fall under E. They're the cousins of people like this guy and African Americans and stuff like that who carry even B1A. So yeah, that's why the whole phenotype thing doesn't make sense and doesn't work. Just like Greeks are light skinned and a lot of them carry E. But yeah, you're absolutely right with this. Like, Eurasians have been going into North Africa since basically the Mesolithic and the Neolithic. So he's kind of late on the game trying to say that it's Arabs. a little bit late there.
Remember, it's the same guy who said that the Bantu expansion ends in 1750. Niger Congo people didn't get to Western Central Africa until 1000 CE. Like, it's the same guy. Like, he has a time issue, bro.
Yeah, his timeline's way off. He has Earth 616 timeline, an alternate Earth.
Yeah, man. We need Loki to fix the timelines, man.
Yeah.
Let me read this last part right here. It says here, further lineages were introduced from Iberia. And we know the Iberian Peninsula, Spain, and Portugal today, right? In the early Holocene. So again, this is way before what he's talking about. Way before that. This is a Holocene. This is 10,000 years ago. Spreading subsequently from the Maghreb into the Sahel belt. And more recently, also from the Near East. So he's completely wrong on that.
Just on the west coast of the Mediterranean that Black people started classical civilization, but also in the East Coast. And Africans had an important influence in the start of this civilization, to which the modern world attributes so much.
Bam! HelloFresh.
Guys, shrimp spaghetti with a kick is what we're gonna make. You guys know that HelloFresh makes cookies.
Often overstated, Greek contribution should, however, be looked at within the context of those who taught them language, writing, art, science, and religion. Not once, but many times over. Yet still, the classical view of the Aegean civilization goes as follows. The earliest known civilization in Greece was the Minoan civilization, which emerged on the island of Crete around 2700 BCE. The Mycenaean civilization followed, beginning around 1600 BCE and lasting until around 1100 BCE. The period of ancient Greece, commonly referred to as Classical Greece, lasted from the 5th century BCE to the 4th century CE, and is credited with giving us philosophy, democracy, literature, art and architecture, mathematics, sciences, and Olympic Games. This is the narrative that we have all been taught. However, Greek history is far more interesting when you take into account what the Greeks themselves said about the origin of their civilization and knowledge. Not only did the Greeks learn everything, and I mean everything they knew from the Africans in Kemet, but their civilization itself may have been started by the Africans.
The Egyptians were the teachers of the Greeks. And no one really considered the Greeks serious as philosophers, for instance. And Socrates and Plato and these people had transmitted elements of their philosophy. Both Greeks can be explained in terms of Egyptian borrowings. And I think this is just an example of a large proportion of the Greek vocabulary, in fact, is better explained in terms of Egyptian and Semitic borrowings.
Remember here that the Semitic language itself is a descendant of Afro-Asiatic, which has its root in the Niger-Congo language family. And the Greeks themselves attest to the fact that the Pelasgian...
Wait, go back. Hold on.
Yeah, I'm about to say, you gonna let that slide, Avery? I was just about to say that.
I was listening and doing something else, but I was like, hold on, what did he say about Greek and Niger-Congo? Or Semitic and Niger-Congo? My bad.
He said Afro-Asiatic, Semitic Afro-Asiatic has its root in Niger-Congo languages. That's exactly what he said.
Okay. No. Niger-Congo is its own language family, and Semitic is an offshoot of the larger Afro-Asiatic language family. And Semitic is actually the younger branch of Afro-Asiatic. So yeah, they're two different language families. And so that being said, all right, let's see. I want to cover something else that he said. When it comes to the Greeks did not speak a Semitic language. The Greeks adopted the Phoenician script, the alphabet from the Phoenicians. The Greeks still spoke an Indo-European language. They just kind of borrowed the script and they kind of changed it as well and made it into their own, made it fit their own language. So the Greeks weren't running around speaking Phoenician or writing complete Phoenician. They had their own thing going on there. And another thing I'll say, and Shu can probably pull this up because I forgot the paper, but ancient Greeks, we have their DNA, the Minoans and Mycenaeans, people like that. They typically carried, or at least from the remains we have, they carried haplogroup J and R, a lot of J though, and a lot of modern day Greeks carry EV13. That's the only African influence you might be able to say, but EV13 originated, I believe, in the Near East. So it's not really sub-Saharan African or anything like that. It's really more of a Mediterranean specific E marker. With that being said, he has images of different black depictions in Greece. And the thing that people have to understand is that just because there's black depictions of people in Greece does not mean the original Greeks were black. Greece was an empire. There was trade between all types of ethnic groups. So you could have people from Africa going into Greece to become merchants or to join the Greek Empire and society. Like they found haplogroup A in what's that place? Pompeii. So there was travel of people from Africa into Greece, but that doesn't mean the entire civilization was African. Most of the markers we find is Eurasian. So you can't just use statues to say the entire population look like that. There's plenty of Greek statues that look Caucasian, that look like modern day Greek people. Can be cherry picking statues.
He loves cherry picking statues, man.
Yeah, cherry picking statues and getting languages mixed up, like saying that the Natufian spoke Niger-Congo, and the Greeks spoke Niger-Congo. Wait, the Natufian spoke Niger-Congo, and the Semitic language descends from Niger. Oh, I don't get it.
Yeah, that's exactly what he said. And just to buttress what you said about the Greeks, these are the ancient Greek haplogroups that we see here. Haplogroup G2A, shout out to the Tail twins, and J2A, with a primary Minoan and Mycenaean haplogroups, which he's going to bring up the Mycenaeans and try to say that they're ancient Africans and whatnot. And they're not. Here's the haplogroups. These are Eurasian peoples that were there. That's what you got. This is not no ancient Ivan Van Sertima African, purely African bred race here. No. And look at the women, Eurasian as well. H, K, U, W, haplogroup X2 with J2, and then the More recent, the Corinthian and the Mycenaean elite, you see R1b. That's it. That's it. So again, another claim does not comport with the evidence at all.
Nope. And I think even the genomic breakdown of them, I believe that a lot of the DNA is from Caucasus hunter-gatherers, particularly with the J markers. And Caucasus hunter-gatherers, that's not African. So yeah, even autosomally, these people are pretty Eurasian, pretty Caucasian, as some might say.
Semitic language itself is a descendant of Afro-Asiatic, which has its root in the Niger-Congo language family. And the Greeks themselves attest to the fact that the Pelasgians started their civilization. They were the first people who later on, in 1600 BC, started the Mycenaean civilization. So the Pelasgians play a crucial role in the foundation of Greek civilization. Asius of Samos relates to us that, quote, Pelasgus was the godlike founder of the Pelasgians, and that from the black earth he came. End quote. Now, where in antiquity have we heard the term black earth before? You guessed it. It is exactly the appellation of the ancient Egyptian land, Kemet, which translates to both the Black Land and the Land of the Blacks. And there is an even larger classical civilization that was started by the Africans. One that people still talk about today as the greatest civilization in history after Egypt and Sumer.
Think about a child you love. Now take away their clean clothes, access to water.
Rome is indebted to the Etruscans in the same way the Greek took almost all aspects of their civilization from Kemet, Egypt. The Etruscans lived between 800 and 300 BC in northern Italy. The Romans inherited the core elements of their civilization from
Pause real quick.
Before being
there's actually a few interesting papers on the Etruscans, and it's actually believed that the Etruscans came from like Armenia and Anatolia, and then migrated through there to to Italy. So I probably should pull up the paper here in a minute, but yeah, the Etruscans seem to have been like I guess you can say a Southern Caucasian Anatolian people. Let me see if I can pull up the paper. But yeah, they're not Yoruba or anything like that. Let me see if I can find the Etruscan DNA paper.
They're not black Africans, as he says in his word.
Yeah, they're not black Africans.
We actually have Etruscan samples.
Oh yeah, can you pull that up? I was going to see if I can find a paper on it, but you can pull up the samples.
Yeah, I got it. So again, Wiki, go straight to Wiki. And this is the genetics of the Etruscans. It says here a 2021 genetic study published in the journal Science Advances analyzed the autosomal DNA of 48 Iron Age individuals from Tuscany and Lazio. This is in Italy, where the Etruscans are known to be. It says and confirmed that the Etruscan individuals displayed the ancestral component step in the same percentages as found in previously analyzed Iron Age Latins, and that the Etruscan DNA completely lacks a signal of recent admixture with Anatolia or the Eastern Mediterranean. Concluded that the Etruscans were autochthonous. They had a genetic profile similar to their Latin neighbors. So they're autochthonous. They belong to Italy. They've been in Italy a long time. That's what it's telling you. This is not some ancillary group that came from Africa and colonized Italy and showed them civilization like he's trying to claim in the video. Both Etruscans and Latins joined firmly the European cluster. 75% of the Etruscan male individuals are found to belong to haplogroup R1b, especially R1b P312 and its derivative R1b L2, whose direct ancestor is U152. while the most common mitochondrial DNA haplogroup among the Etruscans was H. These are Eurasian people. These are not, you know, Kenyans. Like he's trying to paint this damn video.
You know what? Issue. Some African Americans might be connected to the Etruscans. You know, like that chick, that black chick who found out she was haplogroup H, or you know, some African Americans who have R1b. You know, maybe they do have a connection to Etruscans, but definitely not the majority, and definitely not all West Africans for sure. Like no.
Exactly. And this is the paper it was quoting. Right here.
I can pull up another paper as well. I think that is the paper. Yeah, that is the paper. Can you go down? The
Origin and Legacy of Etruscans.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Can you scroll down to figure 2? Well, actually, go to figure 1 and then go to figure 2. We'll go in order. So figure 1 is basically showing a map of where they got the bodies from. So it is from Italy. We are 100% dealing with the Etruscans. Now go to figure 2 if you can. So figure 2 basically shows the autosomal makeup. Can you kind of zoom in just a little bit? Let me make my screen bigger too. Trying to see this. So the Etruscans, these are the samples. Genetically, they're basically 100% Eurasian. Like they don't even have a little bit of African DNA. They're mostly Eurasian. And so as you can see, except some of them actually have a little bit of North African, we'll say that, specifically Morocco. But most of these samples genetically are, let's see, Anatolian Neolithic. That's what the orange is, by the way, Anatolian Neolithic. And then you have the blue, which is Western hunter-gatherer, Western European hunter-gatherer, more specifically. And then you also have purple, which is basically Italian imperial. Excuse me, not Italian, but Iranian Neolithic. I was looking at the wrong thing. Iranian Neolithic, and then you also have that green, which is Russian Yamnaya. So that's like Indo-European, basically. But all the genomes of these Etruscans is pretty Eurasian. Can you go to figure? This is figure 2. Go to figure 3 real quick. It breaks it down as well. So you see, this is another breakdown. It has Italy, Etruscan. A lot of the genome is very close to basically Sardinian, which is in yellow. And then the green is Russian Yamnaya. Also, you have pink, which is Sicily. EBA stands for Early Bronze Age. But you also have a very light green, which is, I would say, a lime green. Germany. Yep. That's likely where the R1b is coming from. The German Belbeker and the Russian Yamnaya. But also it could come from the Sardinian ancestry as well. But yeah, is there anything you want to add in terms of the autosomes and the genome?
Oh no, just the paper points out exactly what the wiki article stated about the R1b P312 showing up at a frequency of 75%, and they dated from 800 to 1 BC. So there's no way around it. Those Etruscans, real quick, let me show the Etruscan.
Well, their DNA break, their
No, because I want to show the tomb of leopards, because this is what people do. That's in that space.
Oh, the what they look like.
Yeah. So a famous Etruscan painting in Lazio, Italy, is where we've seen some of these samples come from.
We can't see your screen, by the way.
You see these darker skinned individuals here.
Yep.
And that's what, the Afrocentrics love this. They go to these murals, they go to these paintings, and they be like, oh, look, see, we were there. No, that's not what this means. It does not mean that these are Yoruba people, Mendika people. Does not mean that at all. This just means that there were darker skinned people living in Lazio, Italy.
Yeah.
And
that makes sense.
You see, that's it.
That makes sense according to the David Reich paper you read, the Southern Arc. It said that there was dark skinned Mediterraneans.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of reflects it.
And if we go to Italy, go to the haplogroups found there. You see early on, old haplogroup C Eurasian marker, 33,000 years ago, early Gravitian. And then if you go down, of course, you're going to see E1B1B. Recently, you see E1B1B there. You see a lot of G early on in Italy. You see a lot of G.
Yeah.
A lot of G. Look at all that G, man.
I think a lot of the Anatolian Neolithic people were G markers, so yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and a lot of H. A lot of H during this time. There's a lot of Eurasians here, man. The only African input that we have here would be E1B1B markers. Everything else, clearly Eurasian. A lot of I markers, some J markers here and there. The R1B, this is V88, by the way. The RLZ54. This is one of the oldest V88 markers. So the Chadic people, they go back to Europe. That's what we've explained this in prior episodes. Those people go back to Europeans, as we can see, Villabruna, Italy. And then some R1B more recently. The Etruscans were mostly R1B carriers. They're not these ancient black Africans that he's trying to paint them out to be.
Nope.
Displaced by the Romans, the Etruscans had already set the basis for the religion, art, and architecture that Rome would inherit. But it doesn't stop there. The Etruscans were known for their engineering prowess, particularly in the construction of roads and aqueducts, and the Romans adopted many of their engineering techniques, such as the use of drainage systems and underground tunnels. Even their writing system was the basis for the Roman alphabet. Unlike the Romans, the Etruscans were peaceful, but they were very technologically advanced. So who were these people that gave civilization to the Romans? And what did they look like? In his 2013 book, Black Origins of Ancient Rome, the German author Gert Müller explains how the black descendants of Kemet, ancient Egypt, created the sophisticated Etruscan civilization. Archaeological and genetic evidence shows that the black Etruscans were eventually displaced by the invading Romans, who inherited their technology and science. Described as dark-skinned Africans, the Etruscans venerated the African sun god Ra from Kemet, Egypt, and even had Egyptian-like tombs. The Etruscans were so advanced that even their sewage waterworks are a marvel of engineering surviving till this day. The Etruscans were eventually displaced by the Romans we know today. But in turn, there is another classic civilization that almost wiped out the Romans. And that civilization holds an important role in the history of African people, as it marks, in many's eyes, the turning point of civilization downturn for the Africans. We have seen how the majority of prehistory North Africa was black, or of ethnic groups indistinguishable from what we would call black Africans today. You can check our episode on Uan Mahujaj, the infant mummy in the Libyan desert. This is corroborated by the studies done by scholars who dug up remains from ancient Carthage. Their results showed that the elite were almost exclusively black, like the remains of this high priestess of Tani. Professor Eugene Pittard had this to say about the discovery, quote, "The woman buried there had Negro features. She belonged to the African race," end quote. This is also further corroborated by Professor Stéphane Zell, who stated, and I quote, "The so-called Semitic type, characterized by the long, perfectly oval face, the thin aquiline nose, and the lengthened cranium, enlarged over the nape of the neck, has not yet been found in Carthage." End quote. Carthage had been settled by Phoenicians as a city-state in North Africa near the current Tunis. In his 1961 work, French historian Gabriel Audizio comments that he considered Hannibal to be a North African. The majority of the Punic populace seems to have had African, indeed Negroid, ancestry. Whether described as Carthaginians, Phoenicians, or Punics of North Africa, according to Audizio's research, they were certainly a mix of ancient Nubian stock Aboriginal North Africans. Carthage had been settled by Phoenicians as a city-state in North Africa near the current Tunis. In his 1961 work, French historian Gabriel Audizio comments that he considered Hannibal to be a North African. The majority of the Punic populace seems to have had African, indeed Negroid, ancestry. Whether described as Carthaginians, Phoenicians, or Punics of North Africa, according to Audizio's research, they were certainly a mix of ancient Nubian stock Aboriginal North Africans. So then, one might ask, why is it that the Carthaginian illustration that we see online always depict white people and not even Asiatics, let alone black Africans, as the research shows that they were? Well, it is important to take into context the following facts. The majority of those depictions were made centuries after Carthage had ended as a civilization. Furthermore, those who did these illustrations were themselves European. It is only natural that they would paint this most successful of generals to their image. Lastly, those depictions of Hannibal that clearly show him as phenotypically black African are seldom, if ever, shared in history documentaries and books. And yet, when you look at the coins of Hannibal minted in Italy, this is what you see. When the Roman finally defeated the Carthaginians, they engaged in the most brutal and systematic eradication of a civilization that we may have ever witnessed in history.
Wait, pause.
Effort to erase Carthage.
So the Paulicians are black, the Greeks are black, the Etruscans are black, but the Romans are white?
Yeah, makes sense of that.
Is that what he's saying, though? I want to make sure.
Well, more importantly, he's trying to make it seem like they're all separate entities, except all the black ones cluster into one group, and the Romans cluster into this white, evil, demonic group. You know, that's what
it sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Romans are the Edomites. No, I'm playing. But go ahead.
That's exactly what he's doing, man. And, you know, disclaimer for everybody watching, listen, he's right about there being African phenotypes and different groups, darker groups in Libya and Tunis and Carthage during this time. He's not wrong about that. But he is wrong trying to paint the narrative that they're all that. They all look like that. That's the issue.
From the map and from history. The city, its people, its culture, its relics, they were all killed, burned, and reduced to rubble and sand. This may have contributed to the animosity that the Romans started to have towards the Africans, animosity that they also had towards the Germanic tribes due to their fierce resistance to Roman rule. When Scipio attacked Carthage in hopes that it would cause Hannibal to return home, the plan worked, shifting the theater of operation from the Italian peninsula to the North African coast. It is there, it is truly there, that the balance of civilization power set on the African and rose on the European continent. An unbroken line from the Natufians and the inventors of the Ashango bone front the Congo basin. To the Nubio-Kemetic civilization complex and its many derivatives, including Sumer and the Phoenicians, to the Kushite, the Ethiopians, and the Carthaginians. This defeat, coupled with the accelerating climate change disaster that was now unfolding at full speed in the Sahara, caused mass famine and decline of civilizations all over Africa, a true population setback that would take millennia and introduction of new high-yield crops to address.
Pause.
It is at this symbolic moment that.
So he's saying that it was the attack of the Romans attacking Carthage that basically broke the line between this great Natufian Black African civilization. It was the Romans attacking Carthage. Is that what he's saying? That destroyed all the Egypt and Kush and all. Okay, that's kind of weird that he's saying that, because I thought he said earlier though that it was the Arab invasions.
Yeah.
So which one was this great cataclysm that destroyed everything? Was it the Romans or the Arabs? Like, did the Arabs shift North Africa to being white, or did the Romans shift North Africa to being white? I'm confused, bro.
North Africa was already, as we showed earlier with the Tamil, we showed earlier with the Libyan, they already had light-skinned variant people there as well. This was not introduced by the Romans nor the Arabs of later times. You're right. This is a contradiction of what he said earlier, and it just flies in the face of the viewer that this guy can't even construct a timeline that's congruent, let alone logical.
Bro. And also he's saying that there was a great shift in climate in the Sahara, which changed everything. Is he implying that the Sahara was green all the way up until the time Rome attacked Carthage? That it was all green, and then that's when the Sahara started to dry?
Oh God, I hope not.
That's what it seems like he's saying, because the Sahara was drying 5,000 years ago, long before there ever was a Rome or a Carthage. So yeah, it's a little weird. That's all I gotta say. A little weird.
That's your boy.
Earth 616 is wild, man. He'll make a great story though if you make this into like an anime, a comic book or something. Well, yeah, you go ahead.
I want to bring this source up real quick, and this is burials. Wait, hold on. Let me put it on the screen. Burials, migrations, and identity of the Sahara. So, oh my God, this is just painful, man. It's painful. And we're at the end of the video, by the way. But anyway, this is the concluding discussion of burials, migration, identity in ancient Sahara and beyond trans-Saharan archaeology. And we are on page 525. It says here, it remains uncertain to what extent this represented a large-scale migration of Mediterranean Africans taking over spaces formerly occupied by the Neolithic herders, or on the other hand, an amalgamation of surviving elements of the Neolithic pastoralists with smaller Berber elements. The rock art evidence suggests that the pastoralists associated with the early phases of Neolithic rock art were primarily Black, which he brings that part up. Doesn't bring this up. It says, but in the late pastoral period, there are also images of light-skinned people of different physiognomy. So again, this early time, you still see lighter skin variants. Not everybody was going around dark skin in the Sahara, in Tunis, and Carthage, and in ancient North Africa. That's just not the case. The evidence does not say that, or points towards that direction. Points towards a more mixed crowd, a mixed group, as far as some dark skinned, some lighter skinned peoples.
You know what's interesting about that? So that's dealing with the Green Sahara, the last pastoral period in the Neolithic rock art. What's interesting about that is because the light-skinned people, I'm not saying that this is definitive, but the light-skinned people potentially could be E1B1A populations.
Yeah.
And the darker skinned people could be the A and B populations.
Yeah, that is possible.
So it's kind of, it's interesting to think about. But anyways, you can go ahead.
Yeah, it's just like the Amazigh. You brought it up earlier. The Amazigh today are primarily EM78, and a lot of them are lighter skinned today. So it is what it is. Let me read the rest of this. It says some of the evidence from the early Garamantes phase supports the amalgamation theory, and that's what we're telling you. It's an amalgam. It's not a racial pure group. They don't all look the same. They don't all have the same hair texture. It's just crazy and wild to even think of with these large flung populations of the past. To think that they all have to have the same phenotype is kind of weird. It says here, rather than the notion of direct replacement, in particular, the early Garamantes funerary structures and settlements like Zinkekra featured material elements that were very similar to the late pastoral ones. And remember, in the late pastoral period, we see what? Lighter skinned people. Alongside things that were obvious innovations brought from outside the Sahara, while some such as developed agricultural package attest to connection with the Nilo-Mediterranean world, others such as ceramic technology with roulette decoration and grog temper attest to the connection with West and Sub-Saharan Africa. So again, what we're seeing with the Garamantes is an amalgamation of people, amalgamation of skin tones, skin colors, amalgamation of culture. That's what we're seeing. It says the latter reminds us that the amalgamation process relied on multi-directional connectedness. And we'll go back to the video from there. Thank you, Laban. EM81. Appreciate that, brother. Amazon being EM81. I think I said EM78 or something. So let's get back to the video. Let's wrap this up. Put a little bow on it.
That Africa's fortune changed, leaving behind it only echoes of its deeds, from religion to philosophy and mathematics, knowledge that it had ushered and shared to the then known world, a fact that is now lost to most and for which we have to fight.
It's Big B, the prolific producer.
History finally makes sense once the veil of racism is removed. What are you doing? You are 35 minutes into this video, and you haven't clicked the like button nor commented yet. Shame on you.
All right, that's the end of the video. Avery, any closing thoughts on what was discussed here?
Can you go to a few timestamps? I want to mention something real quick, and I'll let that kind of be my final thought. So for the first timestamp, can you go to 7 minutes and 50 seconds? So I just wanted to point out just some of the stuff that he had in his video that came from my video. Now this right here specifically, I would say this is public information online. Anybody can find this. So I'm not going to say that he necessarily got this specifically from my video. This isn't a screenshot or anything like that. Oops. I mean to do that. Push the wrong one. But I did cover that paper in this particular video right here. Right here, about 2 years ago, the origins of Proto-Afroasiatic, just explaining the Natufian phenotype. So, but the next timestamp you can go to shoot is 9 minutes and 12 seconds. This right here is particularly where he uses the actual screenshot of mine. The Natufian image in common. And like I said, at the time, I used that as an example, but I do have more newer examples because there's newer depictions of Natufians in common. But here's the time that I used it. I'll go right here. I used this in the same video, The Origins of Proto-Afroasiatic, which is posted 2 years ago, right down there. Oops, I know you couldn't see that. But in my video, The Origins of Proto-Afroasiatic, which was posted 2 years ago, I did make this screenshot, this slide, should I say. And yeah, he just grabbed it straight from the video. And so the next time stamp you can go to, only have 2 more, 9 minutes and 19 seconds. And just tell me when you got to it.
It's on the screen.
Oh, it is? Okay. My bad. I was about to change to the next screen on mine. So let me see what you got. Yeah, this one. So this right here, changing my screen. Let me change it. Click it. So that screenshot, that slide that he has in his presentation, I used it. Well, it came literally from me. I actually created this particular slide, just like the other one with common and Natufian. This was a year ago, and I was explaining the dark-skinned populations in the Near East, and I explained that these dark-skinned populations, they're still the descendants of the indigenous Near Easterners. It's not like that they're Africans because they're dark-skinned, but these dark-skinned peoples, basically kind of like the Southern Arc paper, this would have been a remaining population of people who were dark-skinned before getting lighter skin from populations far towards the north, which would have been people of the Coraxis population coming in. So yeah, he ripped that slide from my video. And the last timestamp is 9 minutes and 39 seconds. And that should be, yeah, this one right here. And so that right there, you can see in the video that he has, there is an underlined area in red and in yellow. Again, that came from this presentation right here that I did. Pull it up, give me a quick second. Right, should be right here where I use that. It's kind of interesting how they're watching our videos but kind of twisting their information. I don't really like that too much, because to me it kind of feels a little disingenuous. But here's the time I used it in my presentation right here. Change the screen. There it is. Here's my screen, and I used it in my, The Origins of Proto-Semitic, explaining how one of the potential theories for Proto-Semitic is that it originated from a pre-Proto-Semitic people in the Levant. This was from 2 years ago, and he used the exact same slide. But again, when I was using it, I was explaining that the Natufian morphology was more robust morphology. All ancient peoples had a more robust morphology. But this doesn't mean that this doesn't mean that Kenyans are Natufians or anything like that, or that they look like Natufians and things of that nature. There's far more specific in the way I was explaining this, but he did rip this slide from my presentation. I just want to clear that up. But yeah, so those are 4 examples of slides that he used from my videos, and I guess he's watching us and trying to Africanize the information that we're using in our presentations. But if that keeps happening, we'll just have to make clarification videos, because I don't want my stuff spreading around, people thinking, certain things about certain people.
Yeah, because it's not that he's sharing it; it's the problem that he's misrepresenting it. Right. That's the issue. He's just butchering every point and trying to efface or erase entire population groups to try to make this Black African utopia that doesn't exist, in real time. Like, There is no black African utopia in Italy 4,000, 3,000 years ago, like he tried to paint in his book. I mean, in this video. And remember, in the beginning of the video, he basically said Mesoamerica, China, the Levant, Mesopotamia, Europe, everywhere.
He left them out in the video. He didn't even go into
everywhere that it has a black African nucleus that starts everything off. And it's like, no, that's not the case. It's not true. That's just a bunch of Ivan Van Sertima, Sheikh Anti Diop, Dr. Bien, Hogwash, Dr. James Smalls. They've been saying that type of stuff for years, and it's just wrong. It doesn't line up with the evidence found. And now that we're digging up dead bodies from these regions that lived during those times, you can't continue with it. You can't continue with the narrative. Those are narrative breakers. DNA are narrative breakers.
Yep. By the way, can you go to his video really quick? I want to see when his video came out. Just in case I get pushed back for saying that he used my slides and stuff. So his video came out, what was that, 2 weeks ago? And the slides are, 2 months ago. Sorry, I didn't see.
November 5th, 2023.
So 2023, November. So my stuff, like I said, all the slides that he ripped my slides from came out 2 years ago to a year ago. So yeah. Just in case people want to say, oh, he didn't use your slides. Like, no, my stuff is older than his. But anyways, that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, I mean, it's a damn shame. But
Wait, click go scroll down on the right, the left hand corner. Scroll. You can actually see my icon in the image.
Yep, I see it. Yeah,
so that's your evidence, right? Took us
the bottom right corner. Yeah, he took it right off the YouTube.
Well, we can't see the links right there. Might have to.
Yeah, bottom right corner.
That's crazy, bro.
Have you no shame, man? Have you no shame? Well, a lot of people get sucked into this, man. It's this identitarian way of looking at the history instead of just learn history for history's sake, not so you can inject some Afrocentric or Hebrew Israelite ideology into history. Just let history be history. The Italian history with the Etruscans, that's their history. Well, whatever group that was there, it shouldn't matter. We're all humans, right? You guys want to have this special place everywhere on the planet Earth where you feel that this need to connect to everything, to feel important. No, but all the humans are important. They all have their own distinct histories, and all of their histories do overlap, and people do overlap because people have sex and mix with each other and move and migrate. Yes, there was a sub-Saharan African component in the Levant, in the Middle East. We dealt with it in several videos in Europe. Yeah. We know that.
Yeah.
But to then say that and then try to cover up and say everybody was sub-Saharan African, there's the issue. Therein lies the issue.
Yeah, it's no different than if somebody like 3,000 years from now were to say that North America was all 100% black, because we have images of black people here and we have craniometrics of black people here. Like, no, anybody will say that's ridiculous to say all of America in 2024 was nothing but black people. That's what you're doing when you're saying that everybody in Italy was nothing but black people in 1000 BC. It's like, no. Like, sure, there could have been a few black people in Italy in 1000 BC, but the entire population was that. Most of the population was indigenous. Most of the population was Eurasian.
Yeah. Yeah.
I bet 3,000 years from now, people are going to be saying, America was nothing but black in the 20th century.
It's called being intellectually honest. And I know it's hard to do it in this space, Afrocentric, Black Hebrew Israelite space, because a lot of people are doctrine driven. So it's not so much so about the history. It's not so much so about the DNA. It's not so much so about the evidence. It's more about painting a narrative for your doctrine. And that supersedes everything else. It even supersedes being honest scholars.
Yeah, like saying that the Natufians spoke a Niger-Congo language and getting that completely wrong from a paper talking about craniometrics. Like, what?
Yeah, trying to make a paper because he saw the word Niger Congo and he was like, oh, well, that's talking about a language. So Natufian must be a language too. Like, come on, man. You got to do better. And maybe that, like Shari said, maybe it's him genuinely being confused on the information. Maybe. I don't know. But the problem is you got to be better researchers. If you want to talk about it, be about it. You know, do your homework, do your due diligence to, go out and read and study this stuff more thoroughly before you come with your conclusions. Look, I've been there. I got tons of pseudo videos on YouTube, right? I've been where you've been. I follow Ivan Sertima and all those pseudos before Abba Bivens and all Rudolph Windsor. I followed their works and I just regurgitated what they said and tried to add on to what they said. I've been there. You have to be more objective and more open to information, whether it agrees with your stance or not. That's the problem. That's why he's cherry picking throughout the video. He's not showing you all the images. He's not telling you the whole story. He just looking for anything that says black.
I'm getting images wrong. My bad.
Yeah, as we show, like the Tomahawk people, they don't fit that dark-skinned Negroid look that you're looking for, so you're not going to mention them. The rock art, all of it doesn't show black people or dark-skinned people. You're not going to mention that because it doesn't fit in a narrative stance. So you're not studying to research to enlighten people on history. You're studying the research to cherry pick some information and try to paint and buttress your claim of this world being started by nothing but black Africans.
Using Gutian statues for Sumerian statues.
Yeah, that's just silly. That's called a sleight of hand. Ezekiel says that's real talk, but the Hannibal coin did look highly Negroid. So the Hannibal coin has not been confirmed to be him. That's the thing. But what I will say, and as I said in the video, I think it's highly petty of the Tunisian government to get involved because they're upset that that there's a black actor playing Denzel Washington playing as Hannibal. Because here's what they're saying, oh, it's false history or something like that. Here's the issue. The issue is North Africa for thousands of years have been mixed from a complexion standpoint, meaning you had dark-skinned people there and lighter-skinned people there. So historically, it would be fine to have him as a black person.
I showed the Torres earlier, so yeah.
Right. There's no problem historically. There's been black people in that region. There's been dark-skinned people in all these regions we've been talking about. So historically, it does not matter. But Tunisians are just showing the Tunisian government and the historical society over there are just showing their racist hand. A lot of these people are racial purists and they believe in the idea of colorism, just like this guy does in this video. And it's just showing his ugly head over and over again, like when movies are made. People are getting upset. We were talking about it yesterday, One Piece. They came out with One Piece. One Piece is a fictional universe.
But the author even said that who made One Piece, he even said that it's based on the Caribbean. Like Luffy is supposed to be
Brazilian.
Yeah, Brazilian or something like that. And it's like a highly mixed in terms of phenotypes. So it's like I don't even know why people get mad at One Piece for that.
Because everybody's colorist. Everybody's upset and mad and want to cling on this idea of racial identitarianism where you have to look like me, you have to talk like that's the issue. It's really communism too, man. Like all that stuff, man. It's just a batch of nationalism. Well, kinda, because it's kind of
because Tunisian government is more like a national.
Yeah. It kind of breaks out of that because they're trying to connect with everybody that's white, no matter where they at. You know what I'm saying? So, our black people are trying to connect with everybody that's black based off their skin color, no matter what nation that they profess. So it's silly, man. All of it's silly. Denzel Washington should be, he's going to play Hannibal, whether they like it or not. But the fact that the government got involved and they got the historical society involved, it just shows that a bunch of these people are racist ass pricks, man.
I wonder if Tunisia is going to sue Netflix. They might have to drop Denzel though. They want to sue.
Ain't nobody worried about Tunisia, man. Tunisia not a factor. It's just the fact that they even had the audacity to come out their mouth with that dumb shit.
I know, because he's a good actor. Like I would get it if it was some unknown, actor that may not be as good, I guess. But Denzel's like a pretty competent actor, pretty conservative in his values, and it's like I don't really see an issue with
What
him
was the
doing
Roman? What was the Roman emperor again?
Septimius Severus or something like that.
Yeah, so Septimius Severus, which is also Punic, which comes from that same region, right?
Correct. That is
This
true.
is how we actually have a confirmed depiction of him from that time. I see that.
Yeah, we do. We have a painting, and I think we have a bust.
But remember, the bust come much later, their present time. This actually dates to around that time, and they depict him as a dark-skinned man, as a Punic heritage that comes from North Africa.
Yeah.
There's no issue here. There shouldn't be an issue here. There shouldn't be a damn issue. Why is there an issue? Because everybody is race-based. They're race Nazis, skin color Nazis. That's all you're seeing.
Well, the Nazis did make their way into North Africa in World War II. No.
People are sticking to 19th century scientific racism. They need to update their damn scholarship and just rid themselves of viewing the world through phenotype and view the world through just the human experience. You got dark-skinned people, you got light-skinned people, you got people that got bigger noses, you got people that narrow aquiline nose, you got people with big lips, you got people that have thin lips, you got people that have several different phenotypic differences as far as eye shape, eye color, hair texture. It doesn't fucking matter.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it bothers them so much that somebody's playing a goddamn movie. Somebody needs to get kicked in the ass at that point. Somebody needs to put their foot up their ass when it gets that goddamn ridiculous and petty.
Mm-hmm. It is crazy. Like a lot of people call this the culture wars and stuff. And it's like, man, it ain't that serious.
That's why I tell people I don't. This is also falls in the realm of identity politics. I don't agree with none of that, man. I get that, LeBron, but it's 2023. Get over that shit. All nations have been through things and conquering, and they've been influenced negatively. But at some point, you got to get over it. Right? At some point, technology is getting more vast. At our fingertips, we have the history of the world. We have DNA. We have all these things at our fingertips for free. There's no reason for this. And then you call yourself the historical society? Give me a damn break, man. How the hell are y'all a historical society and you don't understand that this place has a multiplicity of phenotypes and peoples and ancestries? A multiplicity.
Because they're cherry picking sources themselves.
Exactly. It's the same. It's a different person or different people, but same ideology and same core ideological belief of skin color and racial purism. I keep telling y'all that is the root of all these talking points. That's the root.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They can make the Septimius Severus movie and go get a black actor to play him. They're gonna have a problem with that. And we got a confirmed depiction of him.
Basically, anything that's out of sub-Saharan Africa is going to be up for debate. Anything outside of sub-Saharan Africa,
right?
Because all Black people are originated and have been stuck in sub-Saharan Africa for the past 100,000 years, thanks to the Sahara Desert.
Yeah.
No Blacks ever came out until the slave trade.
Yeah, and that's why that TikToker yesterday, what'd she say? Oh, they looked at the pharaohs and found out that it was 0% sub-Saharan African components, and that's not what the paper said at all.
Nope.
But that's what she wants it to say. She was reading into it. It's called eisegesis. She was reading into the paper what she wants it to say.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, it's just fucking idiotic at this point, man.
It is. It really is.
Hannibal being depicted as Black is not a big issue. From a historical standpoint, like they're trying to claim, it has nothing to do with history because the historicity of it We expect to see dark-skinned people there, Afrocoid people there. We expect to see it.
Yep.
Bond says they looked at ancient secular history through the lens of the Hamitic hypothesis, its various offshoot doctrines. Yeah, and again, that's 19th century scientific racism, the Hamitic hypothesis and whatnot.
You know, the funny thing is we're actually the Hamites in that hypothesis because we're the ones coming from East Africa and West Africa. That's a whole nother thing. I ain't
Ezekiel says we didn't complain when John Oliver played Zazu from Lion King.
What's that?
John Oliver, he played Zazu in Lion King.
Oh, okay, I get it.
The movie Lion King, the animated movie. You know what? The Hunger Games.
Yeah, people complain about the black girl, Rue.
Yeah, and she's black in the book, right? You see this theme over and over again. It had nothing to do with whether something's historically accurate or not. It just has everything to do with the identity and the skin color and the racism and the Nazism. That's what it is. It has everything to do with that. You don't want to see darker skinned people represent people that you like or books that you like or fantasies that you follow. Yep. And the main character herself was supposed to be darker than what the actor that they use.
Yeah, Jennifer Lawrence. Yeah, she was more tanned in the books. She was like more I think Hispanic or something like that.
Yeah, she should have been intermediate skin, Yemeni or something like that, and according to the book.
Yep.
That was fine to make her lily white. That was fine.
Same thing with Catwoman, the newest Batman movie that came out. People were mad that Catwoman was black, even though the actress isn't even technically black; she's mixed. But people are like, they got a black actress playing Catwoman. But in the very old, like the very, very old TV show Batman, where they had, the whole pow and wow and stuff that pop up on the screen when you punch somebody. I think it was like Batman from like the 50s or something. In that version, there was a black Catwoman, and she was from the 50s. So it's like, that's not necessarily woke if we already had a black version of Catwoman.
And stop associating woke with casting black actors. That is annoying as hell because woke has had a negative connotation and usually means some freaknik stuff. And that's another thing. But I gotta end it, Bree. I gotta end it.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Because the whole woke thing, we can go into a whole tangent on.
Yeah, we'll be on here all night. All right, peace, y'all. Shalom. Stay away from identitarians. Say no to identitarians, and also read the sources that these guys provide. Learn the research. Don't be lazy. Don't be indolent. Stay in school. Y'all know how we rock it, man. 7 candlesticks up, and I've been telling you niggas, it ain't a debate. It's a stick up game.
They swift on the truth. And I know I turned the preacher daughter bad. I think I'm a dumb. These niggas know what up, I'm balled up. I'm in the streets, I keep that heat, that I be stepping. I miss the north just like my granny, my heart in them trenches. Yo, girl gon' cheat on you for nothing, so I'm done with these bitches. I think about it every minute, ain't stopping my mission. On my payroll, I got hitters, I pay them commission. Interrogated by detectives, won't tell them I did it. I told Montana that I love him, on Dave, I meant it. Put 20,000 on his head, they catching my senate. Get on my knees on side the bed like Father, forgive me. Was selling weed, fucked up my profit, I ain't make $1. The fame getting to my niggas, I cut out my partners. Before I call on you, I put my trust up in his chopper. Moving like he can't get touched real quick, I bet I stop him. Nigga ain't give me shit, but hand out like I owed him some. I don't give a fuck, oh, if we step together, I'll show you something. Bitches think they slick, they all deceived, so I never love them. Bree was my first love, but she changed, so I never trust them. This the files of a nigga who ain't never bleed. This the story of a child who was in them streets. Why the fuck I'm taking care of them, they ain't do shit for me. Why the fuck I'm showing you so much love and bitch you leaving me? Keandre dead, the only thing I think about is Tyler. I'm full of pain, but wake up every morning and I'm smiling. They think I'm dumb, you got me fucked up, I got plenty knowledge. They don't give a fuck about how I feel, they don't know my problem. Just cause you around me, I ain't forget about everything you said. I let some shots off in the air for all my niggas dead. Do anything in the world for you, I'm living red. Showing love to them niggas, they might bust my head. Mad about a gun before effect, bitch, I won't do you nothing. Mad that I'm up, but you remember, you ain't give me nothing. I ain't give up on my mission, fuck you mean, bitch, I was steady hustling. Handing all you niggas money, bitch, and I was steady struggling. Montana know about my pain and everything I told him. I told him watch what he was saying, but shit, I had to fold him. Up in that cell, bitch, I was crying with no one to hold me. Young boy soldier, I remember what my grandpa told me. Batty boy, if you cross, I'ma take your life. I'm full of drugs, so I'ma die if I get caught tonight. Tell my little brother and my sons it's gonna be alright. NBA into the end, it's a way of life. Young nigga filling up his arm with some hair on. He was a bandit as a child, screaming red rum. You spill it backwards, what that mean, nigga? Murder. Living wrong and right, trusting nobody till his time come. Your ex exposed you, now you mad like I would never hear. Where I come from, I gotta keep this bitch up on my hip. Mama forgive me for all them times I used to trip. Know it's a purpose in this world why I need to live. Too long. You don't give a fuck about me, bitch. I did something for all y'all. Y'all got me fucked up. Off the flip, I ain't got a smile in nobody's face. Y'all tell me about all y'all problems. Y'all don't ask how I'm feeling, huh? Bitch, I been feeling like I'm finna die. Bitch, I cry alone. It's for all them young niggas who gone and all them people who miss their babies. You hear me? Fuck everybody who in mine. Y'all ain't making my life no better. Gang. Young nigga filling up his arm with some hair on. He was a bandit as a child, screaming red rum. You spill it backwards, what that mean, nigga? Murder. Living wrong and right, trusting nobody till his time come. Batty boy, if you cross, I'ma take your life. I'm full of drugs, so I'ma die if I get caught tonight. Tell my little brother and my sons it's gonna be alright. NBA into the end, it's a way of life. Batty boy, yeah. Slash.